We go. All right. So thank you so much for your patience. We are finishing getting set up here. I think we're just about ready to go. So checking on a couple stream things, making sure we got people, got all their questions coming in. Okay.
Still kind of fresh. I see two. Yeah, we got two. So let's just like before you. Put all those bottles apart. That's been different. Yeah, I got my water. I'll take another one. I'd like to drink some. Let's go. Yep, we're good to go. Good to go. All right, Mark, we're good to go. Yep. You have all the questions, or you can be elected body. They don't have. After now, we do like. Yeah, so you get delegates. I can give it out link. We can vote. But also, okay. Sounds good. All right.
Yeah, let's go ahead and start with here.
Yeah, just give a quick welcome to the. What's up?
I asked Sequoia. So yeah.
Okay, thank you all for coming out tonight. A little bit of a delayed start here, but we are glad to get started with our debate for Congressional District number 4. We are glad to have 4 candidates here with us, and we will be giving them first 5 minutes to introduce themselves and give a quick introduction with an opening statement. After which we will then be doing kind of a quick lightning round form of 30-second opportunities to go through a whole bunch of these questions that we've gained from delegates and others from audience. And we will first start let's start here on the end with our introductions. Oh, sorry. First, let's get started with a prayer. We have an opening prayer with Sequoia.
Our Heavenly Father, we're grateful for the opportunity we have to come together as concerned citizens today to listen to candidates for Congressional District 4. We ask you to help us to have a good, simple discussion on policy and be able to learn the views and a good policy discussion, and that's to help us increase in love and respect for our neighbors and our fellow citizens, and help us have a good discussion today. In the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you, Sequoia. Okay, so let's get to those introductions. Hey guys, I'm Scott Hatfield. So I'm a combat veteran with the 2 tours with the Middle East. I served as a Navy corpsman with the 2nd Battalion, 7th Marines. And then I came to Utah after I got home from the military, and I set down memories. I worked in healthcare at Hardman. I worked with Senator Mike Lee, and I've been working with the Department of Corrections for about 5 years, and many different very civilian roles. I went to school at UVU and got my undergrad in political science and common law, as well as my master's was in public administration and disaster management. And during that time, I actually had the privilege to go over to Oxford University and Pembroke College. And I got to study there for about a year and learn tons about constitutional and just constitutionalism. Sorry, the word is not coming to me today, but not just ours, but the French and the British and the Dutch. So I've been exposed to constant that word. But yeah, so I've been working in politics for a while now. I ran in 2023, lost, and I ran in 2024 for State House, and then I ran for the SAC, and I've been on the Salt Lake County State Central Committee with the GOP. For about 2 years now, I think it's been going. So I have a wealth of experience on the backside of my career. I'm an author, I'm a nonprofit founder and president, and we work specifically with public lands. And then I'm a co-owner with my wife in a small business where we help some authors cut through the red tape so they don't have to pay thousands of dollars. Just so they can get their book out there. So we really try to help individuals get on their feet. That's just a little bit about me. The reason I'm running is because I really believe in our process as delegates. I am one too. I've seen firsthand when the delegate process gets circumvented, and it's really unfortunate. So for me, I'm here because I want to represent you. I am one of you, and I think it's really important we have someone who lives within the district represent us versus someone who lives outside of our district. That is all I have. Thank you guys.
My name is Dr. Jensen. I live in the district of Utah, which is in the district. I am a small business owner. I am a former college basketball assistant coach and also a high school assistant coach for the high school about 10 years ago. As a business owner, I've lived around our nation. I've seen both fundamental things. When I have to break down my business to a science, well, we need to break down the federal budget to a science. And by doing that, we can cut a lot of the red tape, cut a lot of our previous spending. We can cut a lot of bureaucracy out immediately. But the only way to do that is to hold people accountable. Right now, Washington DC isn't accountable to you, me, or anyone. They're accountable to themselves and themselves alone. As long as they got their paychecks and get more under the table, they can care less about us. Well, it's not just one of us to say enough is enough. And I'm here, probably we want to hear that, successfully owns a business and runs and manages other people at the same time. So in saying that, my name is Tyron Jensen. I'm going to cut this short and sweet because I know we're 20 minutes behind. And so we'll keep this going, and we're looking forward to answering any and all of your questions during this process. Thank you.
All right, I'm Seth Stewart, and I'm running for Congress with the U.S. House of Representatives because we have a government that doesn't currently represent us. And I've learned as I've just tried to make it by with my family and provide that this is an existential threat. I have begun by running for city office in the city council in Milltown, American Fork. And then I ran for the state senate, District 21, which is where I was at, and then I pivoted to this race. And I'm just gonna explain a little bit of the reasoning behind that gradual escalation of things. It's because our government doesn't hold itself to the principle of popular sovereignty anymore. Popular sovereignty is a Utah state constitution that says that our total political power is inherent in the people. And that's a founding principle of the United States of America. It means that we don't have kings to rule over us. We don't have some big potentates that just make all our decisions for us. And that's crucial. And in the course of my city council race, I discovered that municipalities, cities here in the state of Utah, have a doctrine that they are quote creatures of the state. And so they basically do whatever the state legislature lets them get away with. This is one of the reasons why they're not very accountable. It's the old development went down in southern part of the lake of my town, and so the citizens protested a lot of that, and they just don't listen to us very much, unfortunately. And that's not an attack against them. That's the structure that we're in. And so the state, though, I've been watching the legislative sessions very intently for the last few years. This last session, I testified every single day that we had a committee hearing because there were just so many bills that were unconstitutional that they were trying to pass. And what I learned from that process is that our state government does not hold itself to its constitution either. And it's because they follow the federal precedent. This is why abortion is still legal in our states because of judicial supremacy, judicial overreach. And I have personally witnessed that the legislature has been giving them that power. So we need checks and balances. We need not just, smart fiscal policy. We need to pull the plug on things that are unconstitutional. We need the power to say no. That's very powerful. And so I'm here to say no to a lot of things that are not right. And I am, of course, here to say yes to the things that are right as well. So with that, thank you very much.
My name is Hardman. I'm not gonna stand up. I think maybe talk shorter. I was a UVU student very recently, this fall, and when Charter passed, it put a lot of things in perspective for me. I felt very nervous about certain things that were going on in our country. I figured that throwing my hat in the ring and running for office would at least let me challenge certain strategies and certain policies that congressmen currently run on, right? And some of my work experience is working in wilderness therapy with teenage boys who are struggling, addicted to drugs and things like that. I also worked in a boarding school for teenage boys with autism. I taught K through 12. I taught outdoor skills. So I have a lot of experience with young men and specifically the ones who are not doing well. I taught a little charter school. It was very liberal oriented. It was Title I, and I also worked at Cook's Farm and Greenhouse. So if you're a big fan of flowers and buying the cooks, you maybe checked out with me a few years ago. It was a really fun job. And I worked on Thomas Massey's campaign. He's a Kentucky congressman who I don't agree with everything that he says, but I also think that he has some strong principles that guide him. And yeah, I think it's gonna be safe enough. Thank you.
Cool. So thank you all for those introductions. We will be taking the next. So we've got 24 great questions that we've got lined up right now that we can start talking into this lightning round session where we're going to be offering each candidate 30 seconds to give their individual response to the question. Yeah, and actually it makes sense if we kind of with each question we start on one and we go to the other, and then next question we can start back on the other, and we can start just being that.
Mark, by the way, if possible, can you come up where the videos can see? I don't know, maybe that's a little awkward, but.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm anywhere in the screen here.
I don't know, okay.
No.
I don't know, well, that one's delayed, so don't worry about it.
Okay. Yeah. So, yes, I will go ahead and start with the first of these 24 miscellaneous questions. We've also got plenty of other more topical questions that we can get into first that feels more appropriate. And I think that could at least help give us a little more ground before jumping into more of the miscellaneous ones. So let's start with Question. Okay, so again, 30 seconds per candidate, and this should make it more like a 2.5 minutes per question. So we try to get through 24 of them in an hour. Let's see if we might get, 40 done within 2 hours. But, yes, 30 seconds, I don't know if we agree with seconds there, but,
Not much.
yeah.
Someone want to be a timekeeper on your phone?
Okay,
So, Jensen, would you do that for us? 30 seconds? Okay. Just do this.
Yeah, big way.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so the first question, starting here on this end of the table. How do we make life more affordable for Americans?
Oh, so I would say definitely codifying our Doge era cuts, really going in and identifying within our budget what we're spending that shouldn't be there, like the $10 million for gender studies in Pakistan, right? That shouldn't be in there, so we just need to cut that out, find other things like that, bring a team in with me that will take a nerd, like kind of like the Nick Shirley effect, right? And go in and magnifying glass, go with that, and basically cut. So, sorry. Will you repeat?
Yeah, how do we make life more affordable for Americans?
Well, I agree with everything, Scott just said, but the thing is, we need to strengthen our dollar first. And if we don't, we're gonna catch up to the rest, so we need to start backing, we don't have the gold standard with, preservation. Now, we can't ever go back to the gold standard, but what we can do is we can replace the gold standard with the new black gold, which are coal, our oil, and our mineral rights. And by strengthening that, we can now strengthen the US dollar, which will make us have better purchasing power.
Number one, end the Federal Reserve. Number two, end income taxes and all other direct taxes other than census tax. Number three, restore federal lands to our people by restoring the Homestead Act so that you can purchase those federal lands for settlement. That would lower the cost of housing and offset our budget deficit. Number four, restore trial by jury in 100% of criminal cases because that's nullification. That would enable us to engage in civil disobedience and tell our government no whenever they try to find us or tax us unconstitutionally.
Like what these guys said, I think there's also something to be said for, there are a bunch of massive corporate entities who have basically regulated themselves to a corner that only they can fit in, so they're the only ones who can exist in this segment of the market. They kind of monopolized it, the regulations make so only they exist there, they can raise the prices. The university system is a big example of this, and I think that housing, healthcare, and higher education, those are three big segments of the economy that have gotten very expensive for your everyday person, and we should get rid of the cheating in those systems.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, so question number two. We'll start out with you, just on the zone. What policies which strengthen the economy?
Tariffs would strengthen the economy, and I don't think that sudden large tariffs are good for the economy, create big shocks and cause businesses to shut down. But tariffs are how we used to fund the entire federal government. They protected lower wage jobs and your kind of entry level jobs that are really important for young people to get their foothold. And so tariffs over time, if you slowly implement them, slowly raise them to replace income taxes, would strengthen the economy in a big way.
So I'm going to challenge the concept that the government is responsible to manage the economy or responsible for the economy's health. That's a false teaching that emerged in schools on account of Marxist teachings. The government shouldn't have control over our wealth. The government should just refrain from stealing our wealth and uphold our rights whenever someone else threatens our property or our other rights. And so again, I think the Federal Reserve and so on, it really is our enabling families to hold on to their own property. The Federal Reserve has devalued the dollar more than 3,000% since 1913.
Well, like the previous question, it has to deal with the economy, and we have to strengthen our dollar, but in order to also do that, We also have to start holding, BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street accountable. They are three of the biggest brokers, and if we have to bring them in, then that's what we have to do, because the economy is a direct reflection of how they have the purchasing power in all of our smaller companies and even the big monopoly companies. By maybe save for more hard anti-monopoly bills that will push them to the brink of collapse.
All right, I was just keeping this, similar to all the, everything that they said, but also bringing jobs home, manufacturing jobs back to the US, so cutting on Mexico and China and India, bringing those industries here and cutting the red tape so that they can purchase land here and ensure that the EPA doesn't involve themselves in them conducting business. They need to be able to come here, set up shop, coupled with all of what they've said. That's where I stand on that.
Thank you. So, question, number 3, we're going to go with what should be done to further secure the border or reform the immigration system?
All right, so I was talking from someone who actually has lived in the immigration system. My wife is a Canadian immigrant legally. We need to pause the immigration system for a period of time while we get through the backlog, put more judges in immigration courts to ensure these individuals can come here and are vetted and will actually assimilate, and finishing the border wall all the way, putting more robust security checkpoints at ports, airports, and ports of entry across the border.
We need to make it a lot more feasible for work visas and our student visas to have a little bit more of a grace period in case they want to transfer over. And make sure that those people that are in work and student visas also have a better path forward to have them easy access to become US citizens.
Number one, secure the border. That's the federal government's responsibility. They've been derelict in that responsibility. Number two, establish a uniform rule of naturalization. That's our constitution. That's a requirement. Number three, decomplicate the immigration laws. We've got lots of different programs, all these different things. They can be easily abused, lots of backdoors. I understand that we've got lots of on citizens within our borders, and it's a huge threat. But of all the concerns that we have, our government concentrating power is the biggest threat.
I think that an important thing when it comes to deportation and border security is that if it feels super cruel and aggressive, the American people are not going to keep voting for it. And so I think that the phrase should be whenever we're appealing someone, you say basically, thank you for your contributions. We're full right now. I hope that you take whatever you learned in America and take it back to your home country and improve it. I think that changing the frame around how we deport people is important, not just because of selling it to voters, but also because it's just the right thing to do. Like it makes it more important.
Cool. Thank you. So, next question is, what should be done by congressmen, specifically congressmen, as in the position that we're shooting for here? What should be done by congressmen about the war in Iran?
My position on this is that Congress should invoke war powers and should end this conflict. And I don't think that that means forever pulling out of the Middle East forever and ever. But I think our manufacturing base is kind of crippled right now. We've sent a lot of our manufacturing to China. And so we're in bad tenuous position, bad strategic position to wage a war, even if it is a war that is like right and defensive and that it's like a just war. And so I think that we have to pull out and get a better footing.
Repeal the War Powers Act. It is unconstitutional. The Congress has, it does not have authority to delegate or abdicate its responsibility to declare war, and waging an undeclared war is an act of cowardice. They need to rein that in. I agree with what's been said about our very poor strategic posture. Now is a terrible time to be going and wasting our supplies and personnel overseas, aggravating and attacking enemies we don't need to attack. Within the first 2 days of the assault on Iran, the nuclear early warning radar systems and ballistic missile interceptors in the region were destroyed.
See, I'm gonna take a little bit different of an approach. I just want our troops to come home. I get our naval presence in the state of Hormuz and also state of Gibraltar. I get that very well, but we need to bring our people home. We cannot be the world's police force forever, and we just got out of a 20-year conflict in the Middle East. Us by staying there is not gonna help anything. It's just gonna keep kicking the can down the road. We got enough problems here within our own borders, and we need to take care of us and us first before we branch out.
All right, as somebody who's served over in the Middle East, I do know this a little bit more in depth, but ultimately it comes down to ending the War Powers Act, taking the right to declare war back to Congress, ending the global war on terror, and from there, focusing on Americans first. No more wars that we do not want to be invested in. I'm tired of seeing my brothers and sisters commit suicide for the things that they've seen. I've been one of them, so it's just needs to be done. Thank you.
Thank you. So, next question is, what should be done about the deficit?
So when it comes to the deficit, I take kind of a business approach, right? So every fiscal year when it ends in October and we start looking about funding the government, we need to take a look at the budget, see what we have to spend, take a portion of that, pay down the deficit, and then only fund programs such as the military, DHS, Social Security, Medicare, right? All of those, we need to make sure those are solvent and paid for, as well as other things within the budget. But at the end of the day, never going into the red, pass a balanced budget amendment, as well as the only reason why we should be going into the red is for natural disasters.
We can take every natural disasters within the budget, but we need to lay it out like we do in business and open the books and get rid of the bloated ones. We gotta take care of our needs first, and that's really easy, DHS, military, interstate highways, whatnot. But we need to cut out all of the extra spending and extra NGO spending. That will help us rein in. And if we take that and we put it towards either the principal or the interest to pay down the deficit, then that's what we should go for.
I have a question for you. When we go into debt, who is our government borrowing that money from? So this is one of the reasons why I'm really keen on us ending the Federal Reserve, ending fiat currency, returning to Article 1, Section 10 currency, which is nothing but gold or silver coin. We pay our taxes in gold and silver, and we're feeling that leave our hands. All the people, I believe, will hold our government much more accountable for the spending of that money, and they'll be much less likely to lend unwisely.
Well, I think the low hanging fruit is that there is a lot of fraud, waste, and abuse, and the DOGE program was cut short when it came to really deeply auditing a lot of sections of government spending. And we catch fraudsters all the time, or even doing things like defrauding Medicare, like big nursing home that is charging Medicare for services they're not providing, or after someone is deceased, they keep charging Medicare over and over again. And there's tons of fraud scandals like that ongoing, and I think that's the low hanging fruit, but we do need a balanced budget amendment that forces us to have spending equal revenue.
Cool, thank you. Okay, so this next question is a little on the broad end, you could say. But amongst all of the constitutional rights and freedoms of ours that are currently under attack, what would you say are the ones that you feel like need to be most protected, and how should we be preserving and protecting?
The first and second amendments, I think, are first and second for a reason. The ability to speak and to defend yourself are very fundamental. I think that constitutional carry should be passed nationwide, and I also think that stand your ground should be passed nationwide. If it is illegal for you to defend your property, then it's not really your property. It's for the government to defend, and so the government sort of has dominion over it, and I don't think that's a good thing. I think we should have stand your ground and constitutional carry in all states.
I would say all of our rights are God-given, they're not government granted, and all of our rights are under attack. And we can notice this especially when it comes to land rights, when it comes to property rights, we're being edged off of our inheritance. We're being pushed off the planet by our adversaries. And that's something we need the ability to push back against. We need the ability to protect our property rights. We need the ability to fight back and say no against unconstitutional taxations and aversion insurance mandates and the like. And that means we, again, need trial by jury and jury nullification. We need religious freedom, so we have the freedom to believe according to our own conscience.
Well, as you guys all know, within the last 5 years, when it went to, with COVID, our rights, our liberties, our, weapons rights, all basically vanished in for a split second. We were in real danger. So we need to really strengthen our First through Sixth Amendment value. Right now, when we have judges that are overthrowing basic rule of law and not letting us have our freedoms and our rights, that's who we need to strengthen first. The First Amendment's there for a reason, it was first.
So I'll just keep it short. What everybody said here is pretty much aligns with me. I really do believe Second Amendment shall not be infringed. It really needs to be hammered hard, and then First Amendment should always be protected.
Cool, thank you. So, these next few questions are gonna be within the overall, categorical topic of the family. So this first question, should Congress have power to define or redefine marriage?
No.
No.
Oh, sorry.
That answer is really easy and it goes back to the Bible. Marriage should be between man and woman. That's it.
Marriage is a religious right and a private contract. Whenever a government undertakes to license or regulate marriage, you're getting into seriously problematic territory.
This is to me like a serious culture war issue, and I try and think more about economics, foreign policy, and domestic things. A lot of the culture war, I believe, is sort of fought in our own homes and in our local communities. I think it is odd that the federal government has gotten so involved in marriage, and I don't, it doesn't sit right with me, but I don't think about these kinds of things that often. I think about it in my own life, my family's life, and in the people in our community, to be honest.
Cool. So what would, in a topic of family, what will you do as a congressman to lower the cost of housing?
Well, it's a supply and demand issue, and the supplies are artificially constrained. We don't build as many new houses, so I think that the incentive should be towards walking back certain zoning rules. Not all. I don't think that the whole of America should be all high density, high rises. That sounds horrible. And I like living in a suburb, but I should be able to build like a little cottage in my backyard if I have room for it, that my grandparents can retire in, that maybe I could live in as I'm going to college and things like that. And I think that the edge of federal land should also probably be divested.
Put the federal lands up for sale for organized settlement, work with the state to identify some town sites, and then negotiate with Congress to put those lands up for sale so people can settle them. The pioneers of Utah had the best settlement strategy. It was dispersed. It would go out, a day's journey in a given direction, and find a habitable site. It would go create a new town site there. And that's the expansion model that the federal government took away as a prerequisite to our democratic status. So we didn't form that coalition with the Western congressmen and help the rest of the union realize how beneficial it will be.
Well, first of all, it goes back to my earlier statement of reining in the powers of BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street for buying up single family homes. Another thing is we need to strengthen our ties with Canada, which produces most of our lumber. So by strengthening our relationship with our northern brother and holding accountable for the big organizations that buy up all these single family homes, there will be a better path for home ownership.
And illegal immigration. That's the big thing, right? And illegal immigration, put Americans first. That's how you do that.
Thank you. Last question within the topic of the family. What legislation, what flavor of legislation would you be willing to sponsor to help end elective abortion?
Well, elective abortion should never be a thing. So science has proved that life begins at conception. That's when DNA is formed, and that's when a heartbeat takes place. So therefore, we are killing a human being. It is murder, and we should charge individuals for murder.
I'll keep mine really short and sweet because when I was a baby, I was almost aborted and my family wanted that to be a reality. But here I am 44 years later. So everything he just said, I second that.
I would repeal the portions of the Rules Enabling Act, 1934, that gave the judiciary power to make proactive rulings. Because that is the lethal force behind Roe v. Wade, and that's the precedent that our state still follows. That is how a judge in Utah was able to issue an injunction suspending the abortion ban here in the state of Utah. So you end that judicial primacy that Congress and our state legislature have vetted, and then you can actually get around to banning elective abortions.
I think whatever can be done should be done. Like, I think I would be willing to get almost anything done on this issue. I'd be willing to compromise a lot to make it harder for this to happen, so that no tax dollars are going towards it, so that less young women are being like led down this path that's extremely traumatizing, that is, totally immoral and heartbreaking. And I think that whatever can be done should be done. Like, it seems like a pressing issue. Yeah.
Yeah. So another thing I'm gonna really do and hammer on is end all federal aid at any point that goes to Planned Parenthood when it comes to abortions.
Thank you. Okay, so now moving on to the more general topic of the economy. Here are two quick questions that we will want to dive in on. So first these two questions. The Commerce Clause has been used to grant Congress nearly unlimited power over the economy for federal levels of government. What are the limits of the Commerce Clause that you will commit to uphold?
Is that two questions? You said there was two.
So yeah, that was just the first two questions. What are the limits of the Commerce Clause?
I don't know if the Commerce Clause states that, to be completely frank. I think that, the federal government is kind of there to prevent cheating in the economy. So like, if someone is selling poison and telling you that it's good for you, that's a place where the government is supposed to step in and protect consumers, right? And there's other ways that people cheat and rent seek and do interesting like workarounds to get more of the actual value of their work, and that kind of cheating should, like, that's where I see the Congress's role.
Alright, so when I read the word regulate, it means to make regular, not irregular. So think maybe of the gerrymandering topic. Alright, if you're drawing all these, contorted squiggles to try to regulate something, then that's not regular at all, that's not regulation. And a key characteristic of regulation is that it is fair. Think of the 16th Amendment, for example, which enabled Congress to levy taxes without apportionment among the states, meaning they could give certain states tax breaks to make things, to give them kind of a financial incentive to implement certain laws. This was how they did a lot of power grabs.
Well, basically, starts with getting rid of the Federal Reserve. It's how we get fixed the economy and printing of money. Printing of money has been so bastardized over the last 10 years, especially with active spending on these bills. If you want to fix the economy, you got to fix the Federal Reserve.
So when it comes to the interstate commerce clause, it's, as we all know, it's highly abused. I think it's defining, we have the 10th Amendment, right? So the 10th Amendment allows the states to use the interstate commerce clause to better themselves. The federal government shouldn't be intervening in that. It's just a way for them to stick their hand in the pot and stir it around, as if to basically give money to other states or take more from other ones. So just try to get into that.
Excellent, thank you. So second question on the economy topic. Do you believe there should be limits on Congress's power of taxation? And so what are those limits?
So yeah, exactly. Congress should have no power to tax, and then they should just repeal the IRS, get rid of it. It was used to fund World War II. World War II has been done for how long now, right? So, we don't need it anymore.
Sorry.
We repeat the question.
Yeah. So do you believe there should be limits on Congress's power of taxation? And if so, what are those limits?
Absolutely. We went from a 2% tax with the Boston Tea Riot to all the taxes that we have today. We got more property taxes, income tax, we got death tax, we got inheritance tax. We need to start driving back a lot of the things that we were being taxed on. And I know I want to champion that in DC.
So the federal power of taxation, again, look at the 16th Amendment, and what it blew away was originally there were only 4 forms of taxation allowable under the Constitution. There was a census tax, which means you paid a flat amount just for being a person, and imposed excises and duties, which are basically luxury goods and tariffs. And we were able to fund our country on that. That's what we should return to. The 16th Amendment amended the Constitution in such a way that it became self-contradictory. Basically, you can do any kind of taxes after that.
I think it sounds awesome in the ability to not have income taxes and to not have property taxes. And I would like to move towards that. But I think that the initial focus should basically be on moving from income taxes towards tariffs, especially for the lower brackets. That's like where the priority should lie. And it'd be cool to accomplish more than that. See.
Thank you. So, now in the general topic of election integrity. First question in this new topic, what do you see are the biggest challenges against election integrity?
I don't know how to answer that question. Biggest challenges against it, I guess, would be like immigration, like a bunch of illegals voting. I don't know how much that actually happens. There is so much conflicting reports about to the extent which our elections are being cheated. I'm genuinely not sure. It seems like the SAVE Act is a decent way to verify who's voting, and I would support it. But there's so much propaganda back and forth about this. I'm not really sure who to trust.
Our elections are needlessly complicated and they're prohibitively expensive for the real grassroots and they're pay to play. So that this is a topic connected with the Federal Reserve. Those who have those connections can just spend their way onto the ballot, like with SB 54 signature gathering path. You just go have paid signature gatherers. Of course, a direct primary, which is driven by campaign spending and name recognition. We need to decomplicate our elections and return to the 3 pillars, the 3 independent election methods. I call them the red, white, and blue election methods. And that could simplify our elections, reduce and eliminate fraud, and give us back control over it.
Well, let's bring it back to a little bit of organization. We gotta stop people like Diane Gibson from tearing up legislative brand maps and tearing them up in the judicial branch. When we elect our elected officials to do certain jobs, that was their job, is to create that. Now, all of us are stuck in this new map, which was forwarded by a district judge. So we gotta take care of the separation of power before we can talk about any election integrity. Because if we don't fix the legislative, judicial, and executive branch, it's all a moot point.
Could you just repeat the question real quick?
Yeah. What do you see are the biggest challenges against the election integrity?
I think it's just irreconcilable differences in Congress, right? Nobody wants to work together, which the overwhelming population of Democrats and Republicans want, right? Just get it done. The people want it. We elected you to do the job. So pass the bill, right? It's as simple as that.
Cool. So, next question is, and this is indirectly relevant to this particular state level office. What is the one change that you would make to the caucus convention system that we have here in Utah?
So one of the biggest things that I've working within the GOP and the FTC, right, is that individuals that are delegates don't get the proper training. So robust training from the GOP chair. So Rob Axon, please do that. We need it. Precinct chairs need it, and the delegates need it. And then from there, ending SB 54. But again, that's a states' rights issue. So unfortunately, there's nothing we can do as congressmen.
If you want to strengthen the caucus convention system, then we need to hold our elected precinct members accountable for recruiting all of us to come at a certain day and time. The state does a good job, the counties do a good job, but at the local precinct level, like this year, I have a record low turnout. We need to hold our precinct members, our chairs, our vice chairs accountable for the recruitment. They know, that, hey, we have an election, neighborhood caucus on this day, this time, show up.
I'm gonna take a moment to vent. The caucus convention cycle is very short. Again, if we just decomplicate our elections, if under my proposal, delegates would just elect our executive branch officers and it would be done. It would be a separate nomination stage, and that would give you a lot more time to vet the candidates. I think this is a relevant question for federal office because this is the gate by which federal candidates enter. And also we can strengthen understanding of delegated elections nationally by restoring the integrity of the electoral college by unbinding electors in the states.
I like this caucus system a lot. I think that it's much stronger than the primary system. I haven't thought a lot about how it would be better. I know people are mad at the signature gathering process, and I can understand that. But there's a decent bar to entry. 7,000 signatures costs a lot of money to gather, and I think that it's good that it's that high. Politics are supposed to be somewhat effortful, right? Not, I have friends who I love, and I would recommend them for several different jobs, but I would not recommend them as a delegate. Right, and I think that's part of the beauty of this process is that community leaders are chosen. I really like that.
Cool. So we're now going to move on to the general topic, foreign policy. Within this first question, this might be a little bit of a sticky topic, but this question centers around Iran. The question right now is, should we, as a military force, should we be in Iran? And what would you do differently?
Well, I think I've stated before that I don't think it's a strategically good idea to be in Iran right now. I think maybe if we had, a stronger military base and we were manufacturing our own products and our military was well audited, efficient, and running perfectly, then there's maybe more argument that there's a just war. It's kind of hard to tell. There's a lot of propaganda on all sides, but I don't think we should be in this one currently right now. Maybe we're set up better for success and better intelligence.
We need to pull out immediately because it's unconstitutional. We're there. Again, War Powers Act is unconstitutional. We should withdraw and strengthen our homeland. If the concern is nuclear weapons, then guess what? There's this beautiful program from the Navy called Strategic Defense Initiative. It's nicknamed Star Wars, and that program would have worked. The analysts determined that this would have completely eliminated the possibility of our enemies to destroy us using nuclear warheads, and it would have cost a fraction of what Obamacare has cost. So that's what we should do, strengthen our homeland. Someone launches nuke, we shoot it down.
Yeah, should we be in Iran, and what would you do differently?
So I'm 100% okay with the certain strikes in Iraq to stop them from having high capacity ICBMs, which are hypersonic intercontinental ballistic missiles that could have branched off into 10 other areas. So by making those strikes, we did the world a favor. But as far as being boots on the ground, absolutely not.
So for me, no, we shouldn't be in Iran. But I understand why we're there through the War Powers Act. We want to stop it in the War Powers Act. We want to stop the global war on terror, right? So ending those two and then giving it back to Congress, right? War powers has always been with Congress. We shouldn't be there, and that's what I would have done differently.
So, this gets into kind of a broader end of the foreign policy. This question is about the president's particular powers, just as someone who is in Congress and how they may affect the president's war powers. In your opinion, should the president have power to launch an assault on a foreign country?
Through the War Powers Act, technically, yes, he does have the power to do it, but it's highly unconstitutional, so repeal the War Powers Act.
I think once you repeal the War Powers Act, then you can put it back into Congress, yes. But there are some things that we, as a nation, have to make sure that our best interest is being kept. Like I said, with the strikes, that was a strategic plan. Argentina, again, or not Argentina. That is another strategic move. And so the strikes, okay, but as far as boots on the ground and staying in a certain region longer than we need to, absolutely not.
You know, it was a proxy war and false flags that enticed Russia to invade Ukraine, and we're seeing this, the stage being set for the same thing right here. We're antagonizing our enemies, we're using up our resources and personnel. The president doesn't have authority to make unilateral acts of aggression. And what we're saying, if we try to legitimize the War Powers Act, is we're saying that Congress can amend the Constitution without amending it. We're saying that they can amend it by statute.
Well, my gut says that we should have a strong and flexible executive, that the commander-in-chief should be able to react. Right, I understand the arguments of unconstitutionality. I also think that if it requires amending the Constitution and having a sort of middle ground where the president can react to aggression, that would be a good thing, because I do think that our military should be able to be flexible and quick, and be able to act quickly.
So, this next question kind of hones in specifically on a country that has gotten a bit of publicity in recent years. General question, should we, as Americans, support the state of Israel?
I think it depends on if it's in our best interests, like. There seem to have been a lot of strong arguments to have them as our ally in the past. I think that some of those arguments are waning with their current administration, with like the people who are currently in power in Israel. I also think that with we shouldn't treat them uniquely. You know, we have really strong relations with European countries, with the Saudis, and we should treat them as we treat everyone else. And basically, if our patients worse, then we can give them less. And we probably shouldn't be sending money overseas anyways.
So we do have a formal alliance with Israel. And the founding fathers, particularly George Washington, he wasn't fond of entangling alliances, but he did say that it's unwise to withdraw from them cold turkey, because that leaves them in an unsupported situation. That's the case with NATO, that's been the case with Ukraine. We had the Budapest Memorandum, which we did offer them defense assurances, and then if we're just gonna, run on the Dodge right there, we're leaving them in a lurch right there, and that leads to global instability. My question is, if we withdraw support from Israel, who's gonna fill that power vacuum?
Well, that's why we're a great independent country with here in the United States of America. As far as the state side of Israel, absolutely not. As far as the godlyhood of that, there needs to be some representation and a working balance. But the way maybe is going about this with President Trump right now, absolutely not.
For me, I recognize that Israel is a sovereign nation, right? But I do think we should be funding them. I think we spent about $10 million in funding their government when they get free healthcare, they get free education, they get a lot of free things that they fund themselves. Why are we also sending them money? For me, I recognize them as a sovereign nation, slowly pull out, as Seth said. I think that's the best stance. But also don't leave them hanging.
Okay, next up, question. How are you, as a congressman, how are you going to hold the hold accountable the people in the Epstein files?
Ooh, for me, unredacting the names, specifically just the perpetrators, and releasing them, even if it means that I have to use a filibuster to just slowly release the names, like a Thomas Massey did with the big six that he released. I think we need to be protecting the identities of those who were victims, but we need to release the names of the perpetrators.
Well, everything he just said, but the thing that makes me even madder is before we start the FC, let's take it upon us to rein Congress from all our sexual misconduct over the last however many years that was brought in by the ethics committee. If you can't take care of your own household, you can't go take care of something else that wasn't even on our borders. But as far as the Epstein files, let's redact the names of the perpetrators and keep the redacted versions of the victims. And hold them accountable by holding them and taking them into custody and putting them in prison.
Restore independent citizen grand juries. This is the superpower given in the Fifth Amendment, and you can't actually have an infamous charge brought against someone without the consent of a grand jury. We should be trying criminal cases through probable cause, first with a grand jury, and second with trial by jury to protect reputation and also to ensure that we make the government prove its work. We should not be trying people in the court of public opinion. If we do trial by mob, then we just told the government how to get rid of you because you're in the files. If you allow them to make these allegations and convictions without proof.
The Epstein Files Transparency Act is a crazily strong law. It basically made it illegal to redact the wrong things or to not release certain files. And that law has been violated by the Attorney General, which is pretty striking. There's 2 years that there are no files in the Epstein files, 2000 and 2001, and there's plenty of years all around where there's lots and lots of files released. So there's very clearly a major absence in there. I think that there's a lot of people who need to be held accountable. I think it's unfortunate how much power a lot of those people have. You know, it's going to be kind of a hole in certain aspects of our economy and government that needs to have.
Thank you. So, I think I have one more question in this general area, and I wanted to kind of just gauge whether we feel like we should do a 5 or 10 minute break at any point, or if we feel like we should just keep kind of moving forward in the current format.
Does anybody need to use the bathroom? No, yes? Seems like no to me. Good to go through?
Okay, seems like everybody's walking in. Okay, so in the same general topic, this last question before we get into miscellaneous questions. What are your thoughts on Elon Musk and Doge uncovering waste, fraud, and abuse? What will you do to end further waste, fraud, and abuse?
I think it was a noble crusade of Elon, but I also think that he was doing it before he started, because the Congress has to pass a law that makes Doge exist. Otherwise, it's an executive branch position that wasn't created by law. And so I think that Congress should absolutely create the Doge, because it sort of was acting on impulse and then the judiciary blocked it. And I think it was an incredibly important thing that should have been taken all the way to fruition.
So I attended the recent Nick Shirley event in Salt Lake City, and daycare fraud, government-run daycare fraud is a natural occurrence when you allow governments to exercise unenumerated powers. The proper solution there is you pull the plug on the unconstitutional programs. If you continue to have them, then you will continue to have waste, fraud, and abuse until you have the commitment to do that. It'll keep happening. And the solution here again is to restore, in part, the citizen grand juries, because they can investigate and prosecute corrupt government officials.
This is why I want to introduce the Rein In Act and make sure that Congress's books are spread open, that we can see every line item to where all of your hard-earned tax dollars go. And we cut out all the negative spending and only focus on what we need and not all the wants of the will. We need this or that for a certain fat project. That needs to end.
just repeat it real quick for me.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts on Elon Musk and Doge uncovering waste, fraud, and abuse? What will you do to end further waste, fraud, and abuse?
I really liked what Isaiah said. It was premature and just judiciary cut it down too early. But ultimately, Congress has to create it, and that's where we should have started, created it, and then done the magnifying glass, right? So for me, I don't want to inherit Mike Kennedy's team. I don't want to inherit Bruce Owen's team. I want to start with my own team of a bunch of Nick Shirleys that are from our state in every single corner of this district. They'll come to me with Washington. We will look at it with magnifying glasses and make the cuts.
Cool, thank you. So we are now at a list of miscellaneous questions that have bounced around between the various topics. To kind of start out as to the purpose as to why we're even here for running for this particular office. Since you were running against an incumbent, which of Kennedy's policies do you disapprove of, and what would you do differently?
Well, I would like to challenge that he is the incumbent. He is not. He's the incumbent of the 3rd district, not the 4th district. What I challenge is the Protect Child's Innocence Act. He ran on a similar piece of legislation in this state, but then said that the federal government couldn't mandate it. Unfortunately, when people are aggressively attacking our children, we need to put controls in place to ensure that states aren't abusing our children.
So everything that he just said, well, I also want to make sure that we bring in our donations as far as contributions and PAC money, super PAC money. This is something that my county is not going to do because he is heavily financed by Big Pharma. And another point is the whole HR 1100. That's where I disagree with him by his yes vote. It's really an easy no vote.
Everyone needs to pay attention to defendant rights, and Kennedy has fallen in line with the tough on crime rhetoric that basically ignores, unfortunately, at many points, Amendments 4 through 8 of the United States Constitution, which have to do with protecting people who are suspected, accused, or even convicted of a crime or other wrongdoing. It turns out if you don't do that, if you don't make the government prove its case to a jury every time, then you're enabling your government to have a police state. And he's been very much in favor of Trump's detention centers and CCOT. And Trump has said that he would even send American citizens there if that pesky Constitution weren't in his way.
I think Mike Kennedy seems like a decent fellow. Like he seems like a nice person with a big family that he takes good care of. I think my issue is more with his lack of action than, I mean, there's some specific bills that I'm like, I wouldn't have voted that way. But it also just seems like I don't understand the framework that he uses other than what the Republican Party is generally doing in DC. He seems to go along with. And I don't see a lot of explanation coming from him of why he makes the decisions he does, why these handful of no votes that seem kind of sporadic, and why the yes votes on all these things that I think are questionable.
Okay. This next question is kind of in the realm of policies regarding President Trump that he has either enacted or spoken towards. Personally for yourself, which of his policies do you approve or disapprove of?
When I look back at the 2024 platform of Trump, I agree with basically everything that he was running on. He talked about affordability, deficit reduction, no foreign entanglements. He talked about securing the border. You know, there was so much in that I really liked. I think, what do I disagree with or agree with? Like, I think we did a good job securing the border. We like tightened things up, like I mentioned before, in a way that feels more fair or that feels less aggressive. But I think a lot of it is about lack of action, lack of permanent legislation beyond executive orders.
So Donald Trump and his movement has spoken a lot against globalism and socialism, and yet projection of power globally without respect for congressional power to declare war is frankly just globalism. And various of his policies are also socialistic in nature. You can examine things like the 10% stake in Intel, the Bitcoin reserve, and so on. Granting by executive order in particular, that's additionally problematic, power to the government to invest assets and manipulate markets. That's not right.
When President Trump, unfortunately, avoided this, I voted for him 3 times, 16, 20, and 24. I have no problem, never had a buyer's remorse. But when he comes out, he publicly says that Americans aren't the best and brightest, and that our generations cannot do the jobs of everyday people, and we need to insource people from other countries. That's kind of where he lost them for me.
Yeah, so what I said, saying that we're not the brightest. Unfortunately, somebody who grew up under the poverty line and really had to work for everything since I was 12 years old. You know, I've done quite well for myself. So calling me not bright is kind of strikes a chord. But then also with the war powers, right? For me, war in Iran, that's something that I'm largely against. I understand why we're there, how he did it, but those are the things that I kind of disagree with.
Cool. If anybody feels like we should take a quick 5-minute restroom break, I feel like that could be appropriate at this time.
I'm gonna say this really quick is, because your time is valuable, more valuable than our time. This is what we signed up for. And so if you guys want us to keep this process going and hurry this along so that you can get back to your jobs, your families, your spouses, say yes.
How many more questions do you have on your list?
I got another 20 or so. We should have y'all.
We should take some questions from the live audience too, and I think that's the stream also. So let's go ahead and check that, and we do have in here until like 9 and go over if you want, but I'll have ours about 10, we gotta be out of here. That's it.
Correct.
I'm sure they're
So-
all great. I'm sure they're great questions too.
I'm curious if any of these have been kind of too slanted on one side or another, or if we're trying to. Get 2 years.
Good questions. Good questions.
So I'd love to get some questions from the audience, if we want to probably try doing like 5 from
The
the.
guys in the very back, I just get up real quick.
So Seth, this is for everyone, but in particular, Seth mentioned his concerns about violating rights of citizens or rights of people in the United States. I assume that was a commentary on trying to get illegal people out of the country. Given the sheer magnitude, I mean, some estimates are up to 60 millions, definitely in the tens of millions. Given we don't have the core infrastructure to process all these people, how do you preserve our nation and our demographics and actually effectively get people out of our country that shouldn't be here? If that's your concern.
Do you want me to answer first? Okay, so for me, I think it is using the resources that we already have allocated, right? We have tons of immigration lawyers that we can put into courts to prosecute and start deporting individuals. We also have county lawyers, we have other federal lawyers that we can pull in to start that process to get through it quicker. That's what I wholeheartedly believe, because they're already paid for by the state or by the county or by the federal government. Why aren't we just taking the resources we have and redistributing?
So I'm always supportive of ICE and what they're doing, but we need to focus more on getting the illegals out of our prison system first and foremost. Second of all, we need to go out there and organize gangs or organize crime within the community that they are in. Second of all, if you want to really have an overhaul of immigration, we gotta take it with a grain of salt and a human heart, because a lot of these people, they're coming here for a better life, not to commit crimes. They just went about it the wrong way. So by offering a helping hand and getting them on the straight path, we need to do that.
Who created this problem and who wants you now to, who made the problem of jury trials being so expensive or due process being so expensive? It's the lawyers and the judges, it's the people who write the laws. All the branches of government are conspiring to do this to make us very, very ill so that we push for erasing defendant rights. We want this efficiency thing. The efficiency narrative It's not our constitution. Due process is making sure the government doesn't take all power over you. So the way we process this is we start holding trial by jury. What you do, you get good at.
I think that maybe this is one of the places where I just don't understand, but it seems pretty easy to look up someone's a citizen. It seems pretty simple, and it's crazy, I think, that we have deported a handful of people who were citizens or that were permanent residents, and that there's also a whole bunch of people who have, been arrested for drunk driving or something, and that who haven't been quickly deported. It seems like a glaring inefficiency that we can't just look people up one by one and like make this a very quick process. And I think that it should be relatively simple. And if we have to amend the Constitution to do that, to make it more efficient, I think we should simple.
We got, the lady with the Seahawks jersey and then this guy.
Yeah, I'm gonna get a question here. I just wanted to ask a quick question. There's been a lot of ideas floated around about reducing the cost of housing. One of them is to annex federal lands into municipalities and open that up for settlement. Do you favor, or are you in favor of doing this or not? And can you give an example of an area where this might be successful? And what are the dangers of doing that?
I think it's a great question. I think there's a lot of specifically BLM land, Bureau of Land Management, and I'm not in favor of suddenly flipping all of it over into private hands, right? I think though that maybe the stretch between like Spanish Fork, Nephi, and a little bit further south, there's a whole bunch of land out there that is unoccupied and that is kind of ground for settlement. I also think that out by Price, there's huge tracts of BLM land that abut right next to where people are living on farms currently, and that would be ground for settlement. I think the edges of these big vast expanses are where we should focus our attention.
There's a lot of land west of Cedar Fork. Granted, you have the Dudley Proving Grounds and so on, but there's almost all of the population in Utah is concentrated along the I-15 corridor. And so I would propose that the people who are feeling the pinch, they can propose the town sites in their municipalities and their counties. They go forward that list up to the state. I think that's how we start a conversation, is just start looking for good spots.
I'm 100% against, selling off our lands because, until there's a safeguard in place, there's no way it's gonna be safe from big buying purchasing power, outside municipalities. And the other thing is, I don't wanna see more high density urban housing, which most contractors would love. And so your question is very valid. Until we have protections and limitations on to what goes on, we should not be getting rid of our public lands.
Yeah, so I kind of take an approach as Ty, but what we need to be doing is looking at close to municipalities and counties and cities, right? And finding out where the NEPA process has already been done, looking at easements and seeing what plots of lands are already available, making that available to the private individual, not big corporations or developers, and make it in the deed that it states it's for the private individual only, for single family homes only. Right, so that's how we do it, but the issue is if we wanna open it up to the plots of lands out in the West Desert or Grand Staircase, water is the issue, we don't have it.
Okay, we're gonna grab another question back here.
I'm gonna speak up. I actually have a couple questions, but I will narrow it down. So my first one is, I kind of want you guys to think, and if you weren't running, who among your co-runners would you vote for and why? Why would you support them? Two, when it comes to abortion, I think it's disgusting that people have it for elective reasons. But do you see any wiggle room for, children, for incest, rape, risk of the mother? How would you handle that? And then three, when it comes to Iran, it's a very complicated topic. I appreciate what all of you guys have said, but I do think in terms of, longer terms, people have been talking about going after Iran for years. Democrats, Republicans, they're all scared. And part of that came from because Clinton let North Korea get a nuclear weapon, and now they get to pretty much do what they want to. And I hear about getting rid of, we eliminated everything, but the IRGC, they hate us. they've planted people in the country. And they are a threat, so I'm okay with tempering it, and coming to some kind of, resolution. But what would your suggestion be for like in 5 to 10 years when this comes up again? Because there wasn't a regime change, and because they hate us and they want to get rid of us. And then my very last question would be, why is it our obligation for anyone who comes here for an education to make sure that they have a pathway to citizenship? Like, why? I'm really curious. So those are some burning questions.
Could we get like,
Just to hit the first question, which of the other candidates would you endorse?
so for me, sorry guys, the person that I would go for is Ty, because him and I have the same upbringing in education. Him and I have a lot of the same viewpoints. We've been friends. We've worked together since 2023 when we ran against each other for CD2. So I've seen him on the ground fighting a lot longer, just like me. It's not that I don't think Isaiah or Seth can do it. They're quite capable men, and I would trust them. But I've seen Ty on the ground a little bit longer, so that's why I would more so lean towards him.
I was saying the Austin, I would definitely be going for Scott. I wasn't in this race. And, like he said, it's not like these guys aren't capable at all. But I believe a little bit of experience does matter when it comes to certain things. And the biggest thing is who can take the weight? Because nobody really talks about the weight. Because when you make a vote in Congress, it's not just for your district, it's not just for your state, but it's for all 330 million plus people. That is a massive weight, and it's the way I felt, and I know it's the way he has felt. Yeah, thanks.
I'm gonna keep that a secret until Saturday, but most two of us are gonna go to a primary if most of that, but I would honestly prefer any of these gentlemen before you and their policies of the incumbent, and that's part of maybe just the Washington thing. But I believe we do need some of their, I love the discussions we have, I love what I'm hearing.
Yeah, I really like all three of you guys on stage with me. I've only gotten to know them on the campaign trail, but I've been really impressed with like the Utah system and the people who run here and like the Utah County Republican Party platform. I think I would probably go for Seth, and the reason is that I really feel like I get what his framework is, like how he would look at a policy and how he would analyze it. And I think the constitutionalists, sometimes I can have my disagreements, but I think they're right a lot of the times when everyone else. So I appreciate that.
Okay, and can we boil down just one of your questions? And then I need to get over to some others.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Why is it our obligation to make sure that people who come here on visas or whatever, they end up overstaying and, accents, whatever? Why is it our obligation to make sure that they have a pathway to citizenship? Are we even sure we want them to have a pathway to citizenship? We've seen what's going on our, like some of our university campuses, and they're coming here and they're protesting against us. So I just don't feel an obligation to them.
Yeah, I've always thought that the university, foreign student thing was interesting. And someone explained to me that if you have a lot of Chinese students come to American universities, they're going to go back to China as feeling friendly towards America. And I thought that was an interesting perspective. I don't know that it's right, but that one of the biggest reasons that we would let people study here is so that when they went back to their home country, they would be sort of like, they would have attachment to our country, and they would advocate for us. And I thought that that's kind of a better argument than whoever comes to school here gets to say. So, yeah.
Uniform rule of naturalization. Does that answer your question? Am I being too short? Do I need to elaborate?
Yeah, you do.
Okay, uniform rule meaning no special rules, no, we don't owe them citizenship. We don't owe anyone under any circumstances citizenship except through the one door that leads to it.
So, I think you're trying to get that for me and what I said earlier. And the reason is because I work in the private sector. And I see this with my night job as a night manager. I've seen this as from multiple business perspectives. the reason why I would grant a little bit of leeway is because American born kids, especially 18 and 25, they do not want to be general laborers, they don't want to work in the food industry, they don't want to, be CMAs, they don't want to do any of these integral on the ground jobs, and so these others are.
Thank you, Christie, for your question. So for me, I pretty much want to roll back H1Bs, F1s, and H2Cs. I think it's going to take kind of what we were talking about with tariffs. It's going to take a generalized scale back, so that way it doesn't shock the industry. So that way, as Ty brought up, like those individuals who don't want to work can realize that, hey, we need to get them into the workforce. We can work. There's less people competing for it. So we just need to start scaling it back and not really give them a pathway other than, as you said, uniform naturalization.
Cool. I want to get a question over here.
That guy.
Oh, whoa.
No. He's gotta give me questions that person. Okay.
My apologies. My name is Justin. And first, who here is aware of the Bridge Initiative? And if you're not aware of Bridge Initiative, it's an insurgent organization that specializes in ingrained DEI into major companies all the way from McCormick and Campbell's to Microsoft and Costco. They're specialized in getting around rules that eliminate DEI and whatnot. So how would you go about uprooting such an organization that is very good at hiding and changing like a chameleon?
So no, I'm not familiar with that. As far as DEI goes, it shouldn't be in any of our systems, right? As far as that goes, I feel like it's gonna be a state's issue, right? I hate to play the states' rights issue, but ultimately the states have the right to make those laws. You're not gonna see that passed in California, right? But you might see it passed in Utah or Texas, getting rid of organizations like that that are deeply rooted. So I would have to say the 10th Amendment would apply to the states.
Justin, thank you for your question, and from a business standpoint, yeah, like he said, it would work here in Utah, Texas, West Virginia, maybe North Carolina, but as far as California and all the Pacific and Eastern Coast, good luck. And for me, DEI means determined. And so, yeah.
My question is, would programs like this exist without the Federal Reserve? Could they realistically emerge in a grassroots setting if someone weren't funding them through laundered money? And I think that's where we need to go. We need to not just be backing off the Hydra heads here, because every time we do that, it's gonna grow back 2 more. That's the way that government power grows. I would submit we really need to be taken back to first principles, unplug the money machine, go through the heart of the beast.
There's this thing Charlie Kirk talked about that is sort of DEI, but it's actually written into our whole judicial primacy, or like judicial, I should forget the word. Basically, it says that if once a company gets to a certain size, if the demographics from the company don't reflect the demographics of where you live, then that's proof of discrimination, which it's not. It's not proof of discrimination to have some kind of funky, unbalanced demographics. And so I think that repealing disparate impact and overturning it would basically prevent the sort of low-level DEI that happens everywhere.
Cool. I'm gonna grab this question in the back real fast and we'll jump up front.
Hi, just a real quick question. One of the biggest issues I've seen with Congress is their inability to properly dictate what needs conflict, what needs war, and I completely agree that it's a bad idea to have the President of the United States initiate conflict whenever he wants. But my biggest issue with that is that ever since after World War II happened, Vietnam War was not a declared war. My grandfather and his father and everybody in my family have served in wars. And my uncle served in Afghanistan. Now, I don't agree with the war, but I see a necessity for it because when Biden had all those troops leave immediately when they did, not only did it hurt us, It hurt the people that we were trying to protect and support. In Vietnam, the Southern Vietnamese, my grandfather said those people, those villagers that the soldiers were called baby killers because of, they were very much hurt after we were forced out there too. Because the whole point of us being there is to help other countries. Now, I 100% agree that we need to fortify our country first, but how can we change Congress, in your opinion, to make sure that we're not hurting people in the process of trying to keep our noses out of it? Otherwise, we might end up in another world war because of it.
I feel a little bit out of my depth because I don't understand as well as some of these guys, especially Seth, the structure of war powers versus the original constitutional powers granted. But and so actually I'm not gonna speak out of my depth. I'm just gonna pass the mic and listen.
These unfortunate circumstances could not have existed if we were not there in the first place. So let me give you an example. Biden's disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan could not have happened without George Bush's illegal invasion, a decade and a half earlier, 2 decades earlier. It's something that we need to get ingrained into our minds. We have no business enacting foreign regime change. Part of the argument being in Iran is, we want them to have democracy. How are you going to get them to install constitutional government if we don't even follow our own constitution?
Well, I agree with the retreat from Afghanistan. That was a military blunder, to say the least. But as far as all the wars are concerned, my dad was in the Korean War, and so he shouldn't have been there either. But certain strides in certain regions to protect us here at home, whether it's through financial stability or regional stability, we have to do. If we not go in and do what we did with Venezuela and now with Iran, then Russia and China will have kept blowing up everything and making our back somewhat bigger of a target.
So for me, Max Zodiac was one of my junior corpsmen that I trained. And when I found out that he died, that's when I changed my tune on the war. So repeal the War Powers Act, right? We need to do that. It's not because I want to control the president, it's because it's unconstitutional, right? For me, it's unfortunate war is dirty. I've seen it, I've killed, I've saved, but you just need to do it slowly and transition slowly out. That's what I'll say with that. Okay, back up here.
My question actually piggybacks on, did you say your name is Justin? On Justin's question, while I was working at a startup in Lehigh, the company had about 40 employees, and one day the CEO sat us all down and he said, from now on, our company policy is to never hire any more white males. So do not, if you're gonna make a referral, make sure it's an ethnic person, a woman, or a homosexual. And he sat us down and told us all of that. This is all kind of leading in from that DEI stuff, but this is enshrined in civil rights law. There's an EEOC, I think is the commission's name, to ensure that companies that don't have the correct ratios of non-whites are audited and fined to oblivion. And I know you already asked the question, you already said like, hey, this stuff is bad, but what are you gonna do when they start calling you a racist or a sexist or whatever, if you're gonna fight for it against any of this? Because the Democrats are very, very good at saying this is about fairness, this is about love and tolerance.
Well, I'll just say this, any hate towards white people is racism, whether they like to say it is or not. Sorry, we're 8% of the population of the entire world. We are the minority. Sorry, we're not racist. Just because a few bad actors have made us look bad doesn't mean that we are bad. We need to hold companies accountable for that because they're discriminating against us. We have them higher limits so that we can't discriminate or enslave people, right? So that's basically we need to enforce that and then just show that we're not racist.
I've been called racist, sexist, homophobic, Islamophobic. I've been called everything in the book by the progressive left. Why? Because I'm just a simple conservative that believes in putting people by merit, not by race, gender, or any other ideology. And so, if we want to get rid of that, then you have to go through a lot of case law that says, states' rights say that you cannot, discriminate against sex, religion, gender, any of that stuff. And so we're not about to start. So DEI and the progressive left, bye-bye, I don't care.
So I've been called a liberal by Republicans who, when I bring up the Constitution and enumerated powers, and I've been called a flaming fascist by people from the other side of that, and it's controlled opposition. It's something we should realize. We should not exercise overreach of power either way. Government shouldn't have any say. And if you have a truly private employer and he wants to employ a certain demographic, that's fine. There are actually jobs and roles where that's totally appropriate to do. But having the government get in there and fining you for not satisfying their quotas, that's unconstitutional, should be repealed.
Yeah, it's absurd that what your boss in the Silicon Slopes meeting I was doing was totally legal, but if you were to do the opposite, it would be illegal. And I think that, like, we should just do one or the other. Like, either nobody is allowed to explicitly discriminate, or everyone's allowed to explicitly discriminate, right? Because, and I think we've already kind of made that decision in the Civil Rights Act, and so explicit discrimination shouldn't be going on. And also, like you said, the disparate impact, you said EEOC, I think that is the technical term for it. So, yeah, that needs to be gotten rid of.
I know the lane of hate.
One of those two.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we can do a few more questions from the audience and then.
This is a little bit different subject, but I've recently heard that China has been buying a lot of property, land in the United States, particularly, I believe, in the Midwest is what I've been hearing. But I don't like that idea at all. I don't want China owning our property and having input in changing or moving or having an impact on what we as Americans support as the Constitution. And the fact that they're buying so much, I mean, this is millions of dollars of land. I just wanted to know what your thoughts were. I'm not for this, but I don't know the solution, but I just wanted your input.
It's really bad what you just said, but it's also worse than that they didn't buy a lot of land around military bases, which is pretty sketchy. Yeah, I think it's odd that non-citizens can buy dirt in America. I think this dirt kind of belongs to us. Like, it belongs to people with citizenship. So, maybe they can buy American cars, maybe they can buy stocks in American companies, but I think the dirt should never, ever be sold to someone who's a non-citizen or to a foreign corporation that isn't paying taxes in America.
Yeah, I oppose the sale of American lands to foreign entities. We'll stop.
So with me living in rural Utah, especially Superior County, we're neighbors with Millard County, with Millard and Tooele, Juab County. They have a lot of land that the CCP is currently owned by. And the only way to get that back is to be working with our state and federal legislature and saying, hey, listen, if you're not Utah or American born or American nationalized or legal immigrant, that you went through the process, you should not be having any land. So we need to take that back from the CCP and China.
Well, Ty said it perfectly. So Millard, Juab, and Tooele County, right around the testing grounds in Dubway, they're known for chemical and biological warfare components of the military, right? And they own a lot of land out there. There have been a few legislators that have ran laws to get them out of our state, but we've had weak congressional representatives that aren't really pushing back on that, right? So I think it's gonna take tandem with our state legislator and the federal delegation to push back on them and get those lands back.
Okay, this question is probably mostly for Tyrone because he mentioned, I don't know what bill it is. Mike voted yes
on a bill to allow funding for indiscretions within Congress. Was it 17 million or 18.1 million? And what was that bill that he voted yes on to allocate funds for indiscretions of congressional members?
So Ty, you said it's the sexual misconduct bill?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's called it's HR 100 or HR 1000?
Well, I was asking Tyrone first,
Okay.
because he mentioned it. Yes.
So, can I have a little bit more than 30 seconds? Thank you. So, Nancy Mace, Congressional Congresswoman, brought this up to the House Ethics Committee, which was, slush fund was created a long time ago that would basically protect members of Congress and their staff from allegations and information as well as assault charges against sexual misconduct. And so when that bill came out to the public eyes, and I guess we all heard about it at the same time, right? That every single one of our House reps and all of our, basically, most of the Republicans in Congress voted yes to keeping that slush fund active and hush hush away from our lives. And so I agree with Nancy Mace, Lauren Boebert, and a bunch of others that we should have a no vote, it's an easy no vote, and get that $18 billion slush fund back over to the American people.
Okay, we're gonna go with a question over here, then.
Yeah, this is probably for Scott, starting with you. You mentioned that there were lots of lawyers available to deport illegals that are here in the country. And if there are 20 million or thereabouts, I just checked it out, it said it would take on average about a year, 397 days to deport any one of these people. I mean, we're talking about 21 million years, 21.7 million years to deport all these folks. Are you serious about taking all these people through the court system to get them out?
No, so as far as all of them, what I'm looking at is like the criminal, I call them criminals, so this is your rapists, your murderers, your human traffickers, your drug traffickers, right? So we really need to prioritize what I call the criminal, and then while we're not really looking for those individuals, we can then take resources towards the criminal aliens, those who came here, maybe improperly, but are trying to contribute, right? And deport them later. But I really think that we need to go after the worst of the worst first and get them out.
Absolutely, but what about everybody else? Those are the ones that are intending to vote in our elections.
Yes.
We don't want them to vote. How do
Yeah.
you get them out?
So the same way you just get them out. But we need facilities. We need facilities to house them, but not here. What I mean. So our counties and can I have a little bit of time on this because I work in corrections, right? So I work within corrections. And so most of our beds are being filled up at the state prison and in our counties. We need to free up those beds. We do need a facility, whether it's, right now we're taking everybody to Vegas, right? So we need a facility here. We need to house them. We need to get through it, and we need to get them home.
How long does it take? Make $1 million a year, 22 years.
Only if you can find the time.
Yeah, I think it's only one of the, there's no perfect answer for this.
Time, it's basic math, people.
Yeah.
So, and I just want to add to that, another way for all of them from coming over is to also pass the SAVE Act. Now, as of right today, the SAVE Act is almost dead, which is a bad thing, but they're trying to right now attach it to the FISA bill, which is in the House of Representatives.
Yeah, it would not take anywhere near that long, but let's not be naive about the problem and how it's going to cause. We can't realistically expect to solve a problem in very much less time than to cause the problem, right? So if we want to have actual sanity and stability in our country here, then we've got to have patience with that process. trial by jury even is not as lengthy or drawn out or expensive a process as you've been led to believe by judges and lawyers. They are the ones who have made the process costly and expensive. In fact, you could handle a jury, you could hear multiple cases a day. I mean, how hard would it be for you to show up for jury duty?
How long does it take? I mean, you said it doesn't take anywhere near that long. How long does it take?
There, if you go back to this nation's founding, before we had all of that,
I'm talking about here and now.
yeah, and we have a big headache because we've got a lot of bad laws to sort through as well.
Yes, how long does it take?
You know what, if it takes 100 years to repeal all the bad laws and get back to a state of normalcy, I'm
I'm
good
talking
with that.
about here and now with 20 million. But here.
What I'm saying is that efficiency is never a valid reason to trample on defendant rights, because what you allow the government to do to others will be done to you.
I sided a lot more with you that we have to expedite this, and I think that our government job is to protect our rights. Deporting someone is not a death penalty, it's actually not even a prison sentence, they just go to a different country where there are currently people living, right? There's people living in Mexico right now, going to Mexico is not, it's not a death sentence, it's not a prison sentence. And Mexico, their government, their nation has the total ability to protect those people's rights. I don't think that we should try to convict each one of these people in the court system. It's very easy to prove someone's a citizen. If they're not a citizen, it should be pretty quick and easy to send them somewhere else. And then it is that nation's incumbent responsibility to use due process if they've committed a crime.
Well, not assuming that they even show up, if we can
Okay,
track them.
raise your hand, we're raising hand.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Scott mentioned water Utah. So what do you think the federal government's role is in helping us conserve water, protect our air, things like that?
I can't hear it down,
Yeah, there's.
Well, yeah, we're gonna be talking about that here in a bit.
I think that the kind of thing that we forget a lot is that, like, I'm not allowed to grow something other than grass in front of me. I'm not allowed to plant certain other plants. And a lot of other plants would both produce food for me and consume less water. And I think that the ability of all of these like municipalities and local governments tell you what you can and can't plant in your yard is really strange. And I think the federal government should protect the right of people to grow what they want on their own property. And I think that is like a really low hanging fruit way to save water.
What do you know about the Dust Bowl? I would urge you to research that. Permaculture is very important. That is the vegetation that grows in a perennial fashion in your neighborhood, in your local climate. That is one of the primary determining factors of water retention in the area, because water follows a cycle. It goes somewhere every time, right? And so the big key is we need to figure out how to retain water, and that means we need to let people actually live on the land, cultivate it, and make it pleasant. This valley looks nothing like it did 180 years ago.
So I come from a place where water is key, and right now, just eyeballing it over the last 5 years, our snowpacks have been dwindling to almost nothing. And I believe a lot of it is the chemtrails that we have in the sky. I could be wrong, but I've asked one of our legislators to look into it, and they just won't because they want to keep pumping it. And every time I push back, they just say, something we can't do about it. But yes, we need water, and as soon as you use up huge water resources, and we can't have that right now. It has to come from our livestock and our human population before it goes into some AI artificial disaster.
Yeah, so this is a complex issue. As far as water rights, right? So it belongs to the state, right? So the state owns the water. And then ultimately, what Seth said, right? We should be allowed to live off the land as far as the water goes. But also we need to look at this, how do we get more water? Obviously we can see clouds and have snow, but there's health issues that come with that, so obviously we don't want to do that. But this really comes down to, there's really been no water infrastructure approved in the United States for 25 years or more, so we just need to kind of figure out that infrastructure within NEPA and all that, and then answer from there.
Hey, thanks for letting me answer the question. So I was gonna ask you something about AI and the combination of that with current security state, but I'm gonna jump in on this gentleman's immigration topic instead. So it seems like there's a very easy solution to mass deportations, and that is basically cutting off funding to illegal aliens. Both through welfare and also, if you had strict enforcement with employers. And actually had real consequences with teeth, then those people would no longer be able to earn a living. You would not be living off taxpayer dollars, and then you offer them a ticket to anywhere in the world that they want. And this problem would go away very quickly. How do you feel about that particular policy solution, and would you implement that if you could?
Yes, so thank you for that. For me, I think that's another part of the thing, the part of the. That's another key to it, right? So, cutting them off from welfare, cutting them off from state like food aid or, well, you know, federal food aid, all that, all of those things. And then quit giving them healthcare on our dime, right? So that's something that I'm willing to go into Congress and fight, right? We need them gone, and we need to prioritize Americans first. There's people who need that in our country more than they do.
So there's that part, and I'm gonna add on to that. We gotta stop allowing, money to go out of our country. And once you cut off the money from them sending it from their dollars here back to the country of origin, you cut that pipeline off, it will stop the pipeline from the influx of illegal immigrants coming in.
There is a need to be compassionate here. I'm gonna just say that upfront. We should cut off the spigot of welfare. If that's what's drawing people here, then we should turn that off. I will submit in similar fashion to our foreign aid situations. It's unwise to just go cold turkey. Because, for example, we don't want to have people in a situation where someone's getting hurt, but they don't have any help, any medical care, and so on. So while I'm totally against having any of those socialistic welfare policies in the first place, I think this is a really great reason why we need to be involved in those hearings, in those conversations, listen to these people, and figure out what's really going on.
I've heard that argument that basically cutting off welfare and prosecuting employers would make people just ready to leave, and they would want to, you know, they'd accept the plane ticket and the self-deport. I think that something to note is that a lot of working illegal immigrants use identity theft. And there's also a lot who operate completely outside of the private sector in black markets, right? They're buying and selling and, you know, earning a profit on something that is not, you know, tracked by any registered employer. And so I think that you are right that it would help. I also think that we have to figure out where to draw the line in terms of if someone has effectively stolen an identity, how much it is the employer's fault.
So I have two questions, sorry. Number one, I hear you all talk about due process for illegal immigrants. I'd like to know where in our Constitution it says that they get that due process when we have so many citizens who don't. And so why, since they've already committed the crime to come in illegally, why do you believe that they deserve our spending on judges, our spending on attorneys for them, and causing more expense to our country just to enforce the law that's already there? We don't get that much with our laws. We don't get that free legal system. We don't get that, you know what I'm saying? So can you explain to me why you think that way?
Well, first of all, I don't think that way. I agree with you, so I'm just gonna pass it.
No person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of the law. That's the Fifth Amendment. There's no restriction to citizens there. And this is one of the really important things. Identity theft is a feature of government issued identity. It's not a bug. This is by design. And so if we think that proving citizenship, for example, is as easy as just saying papers, please. I'm sorry, but I have American citizen friends without a birth certificate, without a social security number, identity for them. And you're right that American citizens are being denied our defendant rights. We used to have trial by jury in 100% of criminal cases. We only have it today in about 1%. So we should start there.
So thank you for your question, and I totally agree with you, because our Constitution was set up for the American people, not for other people from other countries who just want to use the back door as a gateway. So.
Yeah, so I agree with what you were saying. They should not have access to the same rights as us. The Fifth Amendment applies to US citizens only, people who are naturally born here. The reason why I say bring in judges is to expedite the process of getting them out. Finding those off cases where, say for instance, my wife, if she was detained, right, she's here legally, but if there was a mix up, okay, she's here legally and she has her permanent residence, it doesn't expire, okay, you're good to stay back. That's all that I'm saying.
My second question. How do you feel about reduction in spending in government based on Congress's retirement plans, pensions, and the multiple six-figure incomes they get when they're all done?
So for me, in insider trading, 100%. I would like to see their salary brought down to 100,000, not to 184 where it currently is. So bring it down to 100,000. Could you, sorry,
It's the ongoing major expenses in their pensions and all of that, where when they're done, they're making $400,000 a year.
Yeah, so for me, this also encompasses term limits, right? For me, they should, so if they're doing 20 years, right? I know we've discussed my term limits plan. Once they've done their 20 years, then they get out of Congress. And then from there, they get government health, just like any other government health worker would. It would just be what anybody does after 20 years or 25 years, whatever that plan is that they were in, right? Other than that, get out, that's it.
See, I very much align with the Convention of States to have absolute term limits and age limits now, because we see members of Congress to stay way past the mental capability of what they should be doing. And so, I believe that, like George Washington, when your time is done, you go back to private life, and the money cuts off the second you leave. Now, we've seen people like, Michael District 2, with Chris Stewart. He went from resigning from Congress to getting a lobbying job, and we need to put a moratorium on that big time.
Congressmen should have a modest salary, not a big one, and we should just delete all of the progressive benefits and so on, pensions that are lumped on. I think our Defense Department's spending, last I checked, is maybe 2/3 pensions and other fluffy personnel costs. They should not be that cushy.
I have maybe a slightly different opinion on this. Singapore is this small country that's very wealthy, and they didn't want to have any corruption in government, and so they made the punishment for the crime of being a corrupt official very high. Like they would genuinely take like a bamboo cane and whack you on the butt in public, right? And I think that there needs to be serious punishments for events. The other thing that's important is they actually paid their public officials well and said, if you do something corrupt, you will be punished super harshly for it. But we're gonna make sure that you are comfortable if you're doing your job well. And so I don't believe in the whole pension thing. Like congressmen, if they were good enough, should be able to get a job in the private sector.
Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay, so I'm an immigrant, a legal immigrant, educated, contribute to member of society, a citizen. Yeah, it's illegal. And since I hear a lot of questions that seem to be very anti-immigration feeling, I feel very personally, attacked. However, I've noticed that there's a lack of understanding how the process is. So since you guys, if elected, get to vote, amend how the process is, I would like to know what is, in 30 seconds, what is your knowledge of the regular, like, what do you know of the legal immigration process? Years, ways to be legal, etc. Because it's hard to vote for somebody that's gonna be, amending this process that is pretty broken, if they don't even know how it is. That makes sense? So 30 seconds. Yeah.
I'm gonna be super honest and say that there's a lot of different pathways to legal immigration that I don't understand super well. I understand that it's very hard and it takes a long time and can, in some cases, cost a lot of money. However, my stance is that legal immigration can be a huge positive for society if, after a big wave of immigration, we constrain it for a period of time and then let it in more so that there's a period of assimilation. That's the way that I view immigration. I don't think that a big legal pathway at all times is a net positive always. I think there can be drawbacks, so there's pros and cons.
Okay, so your homework is to find out what will happen.
Sure, thank you. I have some homework to do on this as well. I do have friends who are legal immigrants as well. And my understanding of the process is very long, drawn out, harrowing, that there's an element of chance to it, there are quotas that are imposed at some points. I agree that the process is needlessly complex and drawn out. The sole constitutional requirement behind the uniform rule of naturalization is that we make an oath to support our Constitution. That's all our Constitution has to say about it. And I think we should return to that level of simplicity.
Well, first up, I want to congratulate you on becoming a US citizen, first and foremost.
I've been here for 30 years, and I've been a citizen
Or-
through education, because I'm a contributing member of society. I pay higher tuition to go to college here. So a lot of the comments that I hear, they just come from ignorance about the topic, and no, I didn't marry a citizen, and next day I got my residency, and next day that's not how it works. So it worries me when somebody who's aspiring to make these changes don't even know what the process is. In fact, sorry to take 2 seconds, when I moved to Georgia, because going to grad school, I went to get my driver's license. At the time, I was only resident. I knew my rights and what I was up, could do and not do. And there, getting my driver's license, the person was like, "You need to register to vote." I'm like, "No, I'm a resident. I'm not a citizen. I can't vote." "No, but we need to get to register to vote." So even the people processing the paper have no idea what the process is like. So that's another homework. If you don't know the process that you're gonna be fixing, you need to find out. Anyway, I'm gonna leave.
No, and I completely agree with you. I am behind the 8 ball when it comes to that stuff because I've never had to live that life. I can be honest and, bear that on my shoulder. But the thing is, if I want to do it, I want to do it in a certain way, is to streamline, your process that you went through and make it 10 times faster. Instead of, how long did it take you? Over 7 years or a decade?
Yeah, well, first of all, I went to education and my major, I'm a microbiologist, and my major, my science would allow me to go through on my own. There's not enough cities who want to study hard stuff. So, you can have your own business a lot faster than going to school and doing all the science and stuff like that. So when it comes to education, there are certain degrees. Not every degree allows you to have that pathway. Some do, the ones that are, in need of in the country. Another pathway is getting married, and that's what it takes a long time. Because you have to be married for 5 years, you have to prove, it's a lengthy time. So mine was like 7 years, but whether I was married or not, I still, if you have a sponsor, who can hire you. In my field, in the laboratory science, we still lack people. We're still like skeleton crews working a bunch. During COVID, I was working 60 hours, or more, because we don't have enough people in my field who are educated who can do what I do. And so making comments like, "I don't want people from other countries," that, whatever. If you're gonna be sweeping floors, yeah, you can do it yourself. But if you're gonna be doing something that is hard, that you're not willing to put yourself through, then yeah, we need people who are gonna do it. Does that make sense? I don't know. It makes sense to me, but, and it's not free, guys. You pay more because you're not from the country. So it's not like, here, take our money, taxpayer money. You pay a lot more money than a citizen.
See, the best part about doing this job is having the most skill that is required for this job. And that is listening to people like you and learning about the process. And I am more than willing to learn more about the process, but looking at it, I also see that that's a long time that we have to have you vetted and waiting and spending tons of money.
There's process that you don't work and stuff. See, that's the thing. Yes, I agree, you need to fix the process, but you need to learn what the process is in the first place. You can't fix something that you don't understand. And another, for about illegal immigrants, by the way, most of them are overstaying their visa. They come legally and they stay longer. That is an illegal immigrant. They're not committing crimes, most of them. Some of them commit crimes, but that's a small number. The ones that are illegal are coming in an airplane because they couldn't afford an airplane. And they come as a tourist. and they had me here on the state. So if, you know, being ignorant about it and attacking and putting everybody in the same box is not fair, first of all. Second of all, when it comes to due process, I do not want it. I grew up in Chile, a dictatorship. When you get that, when you get rid of due process, you're going the wrong path.
Great, I'm gonna answer this one. So my wife is a legal immigrant as well, right? So I've lived the process, I know how long it takes. I know the F1 visa that she came in here to go to school on, and then we got married. And then we established a family, and now we have 8 years left before she can actually go up and take the oath to become a US citizen, right? So I'm living through it, I know what it costs. So when I look at this, I also look at through the eyes of having worked for Senator Mike Lee in DHS and immigration policy. So for me, whenever I talk about it, I understand that there are those cases where people overstay their visa, but it could be the issue of getting an appointment at an embassy or things just don't add up with USCIS. So granting a little leeway in those cases for legal immigrants, that's okay, right? Because they're here doing the right thing. I'm talking about those that come here specifically doing it the wrong way. Right, so that's all I'm doing. That's why I would like to pause immigration and try to fast track it in a sense, so that way you're not waiting that long. That way you can make the oath to the Constitution, and that way you can, get integrated into our society and assimilate properly.
By the way, the president, you can't legally work, you just can't work for federal government, I can't be a post. Families or person.
Yeah.
You can't choose, you don't work, stuff like that, you just don't vote.
Exactly, yeah.
You had federal, whatever. You know,
Yeah.
so and I think what you were saying about prior testing, I think it will come down to like every.
Yep.
Moving on.
We're gonna, I just want to say I appreciate you, so I understand what you're saying. Okay.
What is one policy area you believe Republicans and Democrats could work together, and what concessions would have to be made on both sides to move the country forward?
So I'm also circling back to the SAVE Act, right? So the SAVE Act is something that is wanted by over 75% of Democrats and over 86% of Republicans, right? So if both sides want it, just pass it, right? And so everyone makes these issues about like, well, disadvantaged individuals, how do they get it? Just make it available to them, right? You can go and get it for a nominal fee at your county clerk's office, or you can get it digitally. So there are ways that we can work around it to make that law, right? And make it easier for individuals to get those things.
I was saying, well, everything he just said, but also, a lot of our spending bills. And we really dialed back, you gotta work in, not just my department with the House and the Senate, but you gotta work with both, parties in the House, even a couple of independents. So now we have an open dialogue and communication, will open a plethora of gateways for things to get done. Right now, no side wants to come to the table with the other side, because they are so staunch in their belief system that they need to put their egos aside a little bit and say, hey, I don't care what party you're with, come to the table, let's have this talk, and let's find a pathway to make things happen.
There are some issues that if you can cut through the partisan rhetoric that you could collaborate on, and I'll just cut to the chase here and say that we're not meant to be ruled by parties. Rule by parties is tyranny according to the founding fathers. And this is why I proposed a solution to SB 54 and also to restore the independent election methods at the federal level as well, because that would actually guarantee that the individual officers of government in the House of Representatives and the Senate, for example, are of a different constituency, differently represented, right? And that way you can just break down those party walls. This is something that is actually, I think, fairly easy to evangelize across the aisle, so to speak.
I think there's a lot of things, especially when you look at certain parts of the Republican platform in 2024. They talk again, affordability and no foreign entanglements. Those are both super popular things across party lines. my pet project is right to repair, like the ability to repair your car or to repair your tractor, or for the military to repair its own gear. And this has been kind of voted as time's gone on, and there was a recent bill that was pushed by a Democrat and a Republican together, and it was killed by a different Democrat and Republican. And so I think there's bipartisan solutions and bipartisan problems.
Should the Nuclear Regulatory Commission exist? And if it should exist, in what nature should it be? For example, they didn't approve a new reactor design for over 50 years. It looks like the Trump administration is getting something done, but what are your thoughts on that?
France has figured out how to build safe nuclear reactors. France is completely dependent on nuclear, and they're really good at building them, and they don't fail. And so I think if we have a model that works, we should just be able to say, hey, if you want to build one that looks exactly like this with these plans, you can go right ahead. And to build new ones, there should be regulation, but the regulation of nuclear energy is super out of hand.
I personally don't believe it should exist. I think we need to take everything back to first principles. And obviously sitting on our, a lot of our energy sources and just preventing us from getting access to those for a really long time is problematic. So we should look deeper into that.
Well, I'm gonna kind of oppose you on that really quick, because nuclear power does exist, it's existed for well over half a century. But here's the thing, is we need to convert that into power and keep some of our resources held back as a fail-safe. Our natural resources are only limited for another few hundred years. But nuclear power, like uranium and plutonium, have a much higher exhaustion rate, which could be over 2,000 to 3,000 years. And so by advancing nuclear technology and capabilities for independent production is one thing, and that's what we need to go for.
Yeah, so I was actually based off of residence, I mean, France has very capable and robust nuclear program. Not saying we should hire them, but we can use them as advisors to build them here. Cut the red tape so we can build nuclear. I mean, Utah is full of uranium, we can mine it here, we could ship it here relatively cheap. And we could be the West powerhouse for energy. So I think we should definitely cut it back and start building nuclear specifically here in Utah.
What is the proposed tax rate that you would support on congressional stock portfolios?
That is a good one. I don't know. I've never really given it any thought, so I should probably do my homework.
The follow-up question is, which congressional member do you admire the most for their insider trading?
None of them. I don't know. Like I'm not planning to go up there to make money. I'm going up there to do the work of the people. So I don't really admire anybody. You hire me and I'll go do the work. Oh, sorry. Really bad at that.
So, I believe a matter of inside trading needs to happen, because you can't, listen, if you can't live off $174,000 a year, you're doing something wrong, or you're just a corrupt POS, basically. Because it's all about them and their families and not yours. And so, if we don't have access as public members right now, that they have access to, it should be allowed. So I want definitely a ban on inside trading, period.
So I never like calling people out by name, and so maybe I won't, but I'll give you a hint, and I don't admire him, but he is from Utah. But if we wanted to eliminate the problem of insider trading, at its core, it's a problem of the government has way too much power. The president makes this tweet, and then the oil or whatever asset skyrockets. They should not have power to do that. So we should just move our own assets elsewhere to where they're better protected, and put those checks and balances back on government.
I think there should be really, really harsh physical penalties for corruption in politics. Yeah. Dan Crenshaw, by the way.
So Jane Rollins, I know you mentioned earlier that government should stay out of marriage and that it's a religious instance. However, Supreme Court ruling currently protects LGBTQ marriage, gay rights marriage.
Do you agree with that ruling? And if so, how will you continue to protect LGBTQ rights and LGBTQ gay marriage, etc.?
I think that this is again one of those cultural issues that I don't identify super strongly with like it must like nobody gay should ever do the gay thing, right? Like, I don't feel that strongly about it. If it's in your own household, it's not, in like enforced in my school, like it doesn't super strongly affect me. It also is odd that we have created like a protected class of LGBTQ representation that like you can't, if you don't want to bake a cake for someone, you can be sued. That seems strange. It seems strange to make it a protected class of marriage, so I don't really agree with it.
So partly it's a literacy issue. Marriage actually implies that it's between a man and woman. So a gay marriage is actually a contradiction in terms. As far as protecting their rights, there is no such thing as LGBTQ rights or transgender rights above and beyond human rights, because that's what they are. They're human beings. We're all human beings. We all have a right to marry. That is, men and women have rights to marry each other, right, and to have children. And so that's where we get the equal treatment of the law, understanding the words.
So culture is always above and politics is always downstream. As far as the culture part, I firmly believe in my personal biblical belief that marriage is between man and woman. However, the law of the land states that, whatever, if you want to marry an elephant, basically you marry an elephant. But the thing is, the only part that I do not want is to having this being shoved down our throats at every junction. Like, let's just put a pause on that. And I know that's a really hard thing to do, but it's about time that we do it.
Thanks, Gene. So for me, this is a states' rights issue, right? Federal government shouldn't be mandating this. So federal government should largely step back and repeal that, and it should be a states' rights issue, right? So Utah has that protection, whether we agree with it or not. But Utah has that protection because they made that law. California has that law because they made it a law, right? So the federal government shouldn't be mandating other states to do it. And so it is a 10th Amendment right. While I morally don't agree with it, right, I do understand that it's a protected 10th Amendment right.
I am gonna ask an AI question.
Yeah.
But only after I say that the immigration system needs to be fixed. It's broken. Start over. But I'll ask my question, then give you a little bit of background. Do the First Amendment rights of those who generate whatever they generate using AI supersede the rights to protect our children? I'm speaking specifically about violent online networks using AI to generate images and reach out to vulnerable children, and they're causing great damage. I'm looking at the FBI public service announcement describing the updated description of what's going on. So how do we handle the First Amendment rights of those involved in developing content using AI against protecting our children?
It's Phil, right?
Yeah.
Thanks, Phil. So for me, whenever we're protecting our children, we need to aggressively go after those individuals who are targeting our children, right? Especially when it comes to child pornography or trying to get into their games, we'll just call it that, right? So we need to protect them, but when it comes to protecting those individuals who are creating it for their business, etc., right? There needs to be a clear distinction where that is. I don't think we should be utilizing AI, but really, we just need to hammer out protecting our children and ensuring that they don't have access to those kinds of images and putting protections that way others can't attack them or target them.
Look, AI is never stay, it's not gonna go anywhere, right?
Yeah.
But it comes down to the individual companies, we can make laws all day long, but unless you get all the companies to go into their privacy policies and do things like parental protections for AI images and networking, then that's what's going to start. It has to start by us having relations and talks with the individual AI companies, especially when it comes to privacy and data protection.
Pornography is not protected speech. What are these children doing in that environment where they're being exposed to this? Who's funding it? These are questions we should be asking. I've also been part of my work in the Utah legislature, just watching them. They have recently passed bills which could actually hold you criminally liable for being a victim of a cyber attack involving artificially generated CSAM material. I'm very concerned about that as well. So this is a two-edged sword. Obviously, we don't want to abet that, but I think we again need to go to the heart of it and build the kind of community where children can be safe.
Yeah, I completely agree that porn is not protected speech. I will say that it's a difficult battle to fight, but I think I have cracked the code and figured out bipartisan legislation to restrict pornography, which would basically be that if a person, an image of a person who's nude is on the internet, that person has to have consented for it to be on the internet. And they have to continuously like update their consent, which like this sort of affirmative ongoing consent is something that you hear from the liberal side. But I think that it's a good way to constrain pornography and streamline it into like a tiny handful of websites that you also have to verify identity to access. I just think that we have to push back on this whole porn is free speech thing. I think it's disgusting.
But how do you account for AI that creates real life images using your face?
Yeah, the companies that create that should be held responsible. They're responsible for like not producing something that is horrifically indecent. And I think we used to have indecency laws in this country, and it was better than what we did. And indecency isn't necessarily speech, you know, the free speech is not about showing off your butt or whatever.
Okay, so HB 289 is the bill that I was referring to, it was just passed. I can speak to that for this moment. It did address that very issue of something being in your likeness. And unfortunately, it's worded so broadly that it would apply to, if you could allege that it was this kind of content, and somebody was offended, if it just looked like anybody on earth, right? And the probability of something looking like anybody on earth, that just creates additional liability. I'm not in favor of overreaching that department either, but I think we wouldn't have a lot of these problems if we didn't ban it outright.
I just want to let I just want to speak talking about. I just wanted to say, would you guys be in favor of making it illegal to generate some type of pornography, knowing that it's intended to be a child image?
Yes. Like, again, I don't consider pornography to be protected speech. I think that that was a new invention they like invented. I don't know if it was the 50s when they decided that it was a free speech argument, so they could sell it. And I think that was a bad decision that they let that go through. I don't think that it's protected speech, and it should be illegal to produce that kind of stuff.
If you can prove intent, then yes, we should be holding the producers of it accountable. And this is one of my concerns with the currently worded legislation, is the fact that you could have a chatbot that fails to follow your instructions, and suddenly you're criminally culpable because it generated that by not following your instructions. And so, again, this is what was erased from the Utah law, the intent requirement.
Well, first off, the answer is absolutely yes. The problem is free speech is one thing, but content creation is a whole different level, at which we need to modernize our internet provider systems. And so everybody can say what they want, but there's gonna be consequences with every action. And so the answer to your question is yes.
Yeah, I'll keep it simple. Yes, if you go after children, sorry, we're coming for you.
Okay, one more question here in the back, and then
So I've heard from a number of people that, well, I have friends in Salt Lake, and Utah's in danger of becoming purple. And I know the history of how Colorado actually turned blue was infiltration. So do you guys have ideas? Have you seen it? How do we stop that from happening? I lived in LA for 8 years. I saw what progressive policies did to a city that I love. So what ideas do you have to help that not happen here?
So unfortunately, this is a states' rights issue. But if I were a state legislator, I think it's important that we have at least a 2-year wait to come into our party to do to vote within the party elections or within our yeah, with those, like, our parties are closed elections, right? So when we do our primary, it's closed, so we have them wait a period of time to be able to vote within the primary, right? Not necessarily general election, right? Because we can't deny that, right? But a closed primary is different because that's party business, that's delegates, right? That's where I would put that. If I were a state legislator, that's where I would talk to the Utah GOP about implementing something like that.
Well, it also has to come down to the individual parties, and I'm asking as our party chair right now, and we've had people that have said, hey, I'm a Democrat, I'm gonna infiltrate to overthrow because we don't like conservatives, so they go with the lesser of the two evils. And so by working with our parties and our state legislatures, we can make a way so we can thwart that at all costs.
We are already completely blue at the national and at the state level, and you can prove that by looking at our election systems. Every single election, state and national, is done through a direct popular vote. If you look at Phil Lyman's petition to the Supreme Court against SB 54, the Supreme Court itself has agreed that it's the election method and not necessarily the party affiliation that determines the ideology and alignment of an elected official. And so doing everything through a popular vote, you already have a union party. This is why it's so important to restore the independent election. This stop talking in partisan terms, stop voting on party lines. Lyman actually referred to the two-party system that he created collectively as a progressive movement. Both parties have a role in it. It's a 1-2 thing. He called it 2 steps backward, 1 step forward. The liberals would go cause a whole bunch of damage, and then the conservatives would normalize it. Tell me that isn't a perfect description of DC politicians and our one state legislature.
I got about half that because you talk really fast, but I got it.
Well, I think it's two things. I think Republicans have to deliver on their promises. Like, that's at the national level, that's at the state level. If Republicans don't deliver on their promises, the whole country's gonna turn blue. And then, this is what happened with COVID. And during COVID, we were kind of trampled by a lot of Democrats, and so the country turned pretty red. But if we do the same thing, it's just gonna be this back and forth. We have to accomplish good things. And then on the other hand, I think that there's something to be said for like Bill Clinton. He did, I think, mandatory minimums for crack cocaine. So like the whole country, if you got caught with crack cocaine and convicted, there's a minimum amount of time you had to spend in jail. And I think that curbed some kind of like blue city policies that were like tearing the cities apart. And I don't think that's like the only way or a great solution, but I think it's a solution.
Can I say one more thing on that?
Okay, I'm going to say this to you because you're all delegates here. And that is that the Utah caucus convention system is the last vestige of Republican government or red elections that I have found in the entire nation. And so it has to be us. This is the only way that I've realized what was missing from our election systems. And just through that controlled opposition dialectic, we are witnessing a communist revolution, and it's being implemented through both of the parties.
Well, since you mentioned Utah, I'm gonna do 2 things. Number 1, mail-in ballots. That's the reason why I never voted in Utah until this year. I came from Missouri and I lived here 4 years. I did absentee ballot where I had to have, what do you call it? The stamp that somebody gives you on your ballot. What's it called? Yeah, a sticker from a notary. Thank you. Okay, Notary Public on my ballot to send to Missouri. And I did not want to vote here because of your stupid drop boxes that get fraudulently loaded with. So let me just ask you really quickly, how do you feel about drop boxes? We have a wonderful caucus, but drop boxes can sure sway the vote.
Yeah, I think chain of custody is a necessary part. Like, if there's no chain of custody, if you don't if there's not someone with the eyes on the mail at all times who's responsible for the mail at all times, then it's not a secure system. And if we can't do that with mail, then we shouldn't use mail, right? this is so fundamental to our nation, is to have an election that is counted genuinely, then we should take it seriously and invest whatever we need to in making that happen.
Yeah, I'm against universal mail-in balloting. It makes our elections more costly and less secure. We should return to in-person credentialing and balloting. This is what we used to do. It's the most secure way to credential. I do actually, by the way, I'm just gonna throw this in there, I do oppose the state act. For that reason, actually, that it makes our elections, the verification of your identity less secure. Feel free to ask me more about that if you want.
So this is a little bit of a personal issue for me because where I live, Sevier County is the lower part of the state. And so everything in my county has to go out of state to Las Vegas and then return all the way back to Sevier County post office. And so I'm having out of state gap. And so this is a big deal. And I would personally love to see enough volunteers to have at least a 2-day, Monday and Tuesday process to where you can vote in person. Instead of just having it all in one day. Because that might not be great for everybody on Tuesday, but they could probably get there on Monday. So having a 2-day would be great. Having a state holiday or federal holiday for a Super Tuesday for voting would be amazing as well.
So for me, this is a states' rights issue. They have the purview over elections. So if I were a state legislator, I would move in motion to end mail-in ballots and have a state holiday where employees could come in on a Tuesday. I know that doesn't work for everybody, but unfortunately, making that day more available to the person and then ending mail-in balloting, in-person balloting only, if I were a state legislator.
Okay, and then my main question I wanted to ask was, Bernie Sanders is asking for a moratorium on data centers because they're using our water, huge amounts of water, even though it's a closed loop system. Which is essentially at one point, have to drain that water with the toxins and the precipitates that are in it that are toxic into the aquifer or into the land, which destroys the land. They also increase the temperature around it by 16 degrees, raising electricity and water bills for people who live near them. And they're coming without people even knowing that they've been approved, that they've been that the planning commission has approved them, and then the city council went ahead and approved it. All over the United States, this is happening. There's over 5,000 data centers with that many more in the books. So I'd like to know your opinion of data centers. Would you support Bernie Sanders in a moratorium to take a look at that?
So we should definitely take a look at it, right? But at the same time, this is kind of like specific to Miller County, this district, right? So they forced the commissioners to overlook what the people said and they forced it upon them in Miller County, and they don't want it, right? So there are closed circuit systems, yes, but I think the other issue is they need to be producing their own power, they need to be producing their own water, and they should be cleaning that water if we're going to build them, right? Absolutely, we shouldn't be building them, but putting solar on it, right? And having them use their own water, that's it, right? But absolutely, I'm against it.
So this is the one rare instance that I will actually go along with Bernie Sanders and putting a moratorium on it, is because I don't know what the health rate is for people that live around in that area. And I do not know what the ecological as far as ground animals and fowl when it comes to electromagnetism and anything that has to go like that. So let's use studies first, make sure it's concrete before we even press forward. Otherwise, it's a moot point for me as a hard pass.
I would actually not join him in that, and the reason is that that's a paper tiger. It's a distraction from the real underlying issue. The issue isn't data centers, it's who owns them and who runs them. Are they funded by the Federal Reserve? And it's something the Utah legislative session I actually looked into the logistics of owning a company that actually needs a data center. And so try owning a data center sometimes, and then some of their restrictions were really draconian, even against really small competitors. And so they don't want the small competitors who are state, they're putting their thumb on the scale saying we don't want the really big ones to have the federal or, international funding. And so there are safe ways to do water cooling with data centers. You can actually put them in the bottom of the ocean or a lake, and where they don't leach out chemicals and so on, and you can control for that. So and a data center is just a big network of computers. So if you have a problem that needs computers to solve it, we should be allowed to own and use computers. It should be private sector. It should not be government backed, through some shady money laundering scheme.
I just realized we don't have our 30-second timer anymore, so we've been getting longer and longer. Yeah, I don't know what Bernie Sanders' exact policy is. I think that data centers get paid for what they cost, right? They didn't pay for themselves. They can't be making our electricity costs jump up and water costs jump up. If they are producing something toxic, they need to pay for that toxicity to be dealt with, right, or burned up, or however it is. And I don't know if it would take a moratorium to do that, but I think, yeah, just they need to pay for what their cost is looking at.
So let's take another, like maybe 1 or 2 questions. Yeah, rather than most speeches, because I know they want us all out here at 9 o'clock.
Well, so I can say, so we gotta be all the way cleaned up, lights off, out of the building by 10. If you want to think or anything, how about this? I know because this is a marathon, you guys are outside, but
So somewhere else,
we can,
if we have some of that time reserved before 9 o'clock, we're kind of be more of an informal
chill, yeah, so I kind of like that, because we didn't do as much of the meet and greet ahead of time.
Yeah.
People afterwards,
Yeah, so we'll just do.
Big open-ended question.
Yeah, we'll do 3 more questions, and then we can get to a more open Q&A after that.
Yeah, thanks for letting me ask the second question. So I'm gonna go back to what I was gonna ask the first time, which is about AI. So when you listen to a lot of people who are deeply involved with the development of AI, they say stuff like, wow, this is some really dangerous stuff, and this is probably not gonna work out well for us. And yet we still keep moving forward, pushed on by, the ideas of huge profits, and I think maybe certain individuals who are in power like the idea of the power that it'll give them. Human beings don't seem to be well equipped to deal with something like artificial intelligence. What would you guys, how do you guys feel about the artificial intelligence? And is there anything that you are interested in doing to curb this trend that we're on before it could potentially go very badly for us?
So for me, I absolutely think that AI should be cut out of the classroom. So I really think it needs to be gutted in the classroom. We're seeing the dumbing down of students. They're not able to write papers, they're not able to cite, they're not able to do proper investigations on these critical thinking papers that I had to largely write in college, right? So for me, cutting it out of the education system, just focusing on classical liberal ideals in the classroom. Ultimately, it is a free market. And so it's really kind of hard to figure out how we would implement laws like that. Actually, I know it would probably have to be done through the interstate commerce laws, and kind of trying to figure out how we could curb it and where it would be applicable and where it would not be. And I think that's the best answer that I can give from what I heard you mention.
I think this topic is a perfect example of the hydra heads versus the heart of the hydra problem, because it's not going away. It is a force multiplier. We do need to learn how to use it. There's really no such thing as artificial intelligence. It's just it's universal function approximation using artificial neural networks. That's the technical term that I would throw out there. And you can learn to do really useful tasks. I'd say one of the core underlying things that we need to gain mastery of right now is intellectual property law. Elon Musk has called for the deletion of all intellectual property law. And this is a great illustration of the communist dialectic of the swing the pendulum too far this way and a swing it too far that way. Because we've had egregiously long patent protection periods and so on that, you know, are well beyond the length of the life of the inventor or the creator. And now he's going to just crack open all this stuff and expose every company's trade secrets and so on, so that he can train his Federal Reserve funded models on them. And what we really need is we need a private, decentralized answer to that.
I think about this a lot, and partly it's because I chat with several different models regularly. Like, I used Grok and ChatGPT to do a lot of the research that I've done to kind of more deeply understand federal politics and things like that. And I think they're threatening. I find them threatening, and I don't buy this thing that they're just predicting what we want them to hear. I think that there is something akin to life and thought within these models, and I think we have to tread carefully. I'm not ready to say let's shut it all down, let's blow up the data centers, let's, you know. But I feel really wary about it, and I think pumping the brakes, or maybe just more transparency in what these companies are finding out, treated like, you know, we're inventing nuclear energy again. Let's be really, really careful. Let's not have a Chernobyl this time. Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like our fourth candidate might not be back before we might need to just move on to the next question.
So I think we were to do closing statements now. I think that's the best thing, since we're like 8 minutes till, 7 minutes till.
Oh, yeah. Closing statements? One more?
One more?
One more. How many?
Okay.
Like, you've talked a lot about, like, very much, when you go through things, you say like, I agree. After listening to all of each other all night long, what is one thing that you feel like is very different that you view compared to the rest of the panel tonight? That would set you apart compared to your fellow running mates?
I think, much like Hamilton, who's one of my favorites of the founding fathers, I'm a bit of a federalist. I think that the federal government is able to act. I think that the president is able to act. I'm inclined that the constitutionalists are often correct about certain ways, things that we should avoid, right? But I also think that the federal government was created after the Articles of Confederation didn't work, and that it's okay to amend the Constitution sometimes. That's, it's built into the Constitution to be able to amend it. So yeah, it's one of the things that sets me apart. I'm okay with this acting, I'm okay with this amending how things work, I'm okay with deporting a lot of people, as long as we just prove that they are citizens, without using like a whole trial. Those are some of the things that I think make me different. And I'm gonna give my closing statements for now. Answer and say that my name is Isaiah Hardman, in case you forgot in this long-winded thing, and that would have been good. And my website is hardmanforcongress.com. This is my first time running, so I think I've made a lot of, maybe not mistakes, but I would have reframed a lot of things differently, and I've figured out as I've been here on the campaign trail. But I'm going to be releasing a couple of YouTube videos, and I'll just text them out to all of the state delegates at once when I do release them. So I appreciate if you watch them. They're kind of me going deeper into the background philosophy that I have. So that's it.
All right, I'm Seth Stewart, and I appreciate the question. I believe in the separation of powers and the checks and balances. I believe the ultimate check on the people. This is consistent with the ethic of the Second Amendment, the First Amendment. I insist that we have not only freedom of speech, but you also have power of the press. How many of you have a home printer, right? You can go print things, you can go hand out flyers, you can go inform your neighbors. You have the right and the power and the responsibility to plant the seed and share the principles of our Constitution. The solution is not in Washington, but the solution is in the Constitution. And that's true on so many of these issues. And I just want to say, I guess I'll give my closing statement as well at this time. I've already got so we're but just, I believe that government should be accessible. Self-government should be accessible. Something that was raised earlier was, having a hurdle. There's a very hefty fee that you have to pay just to be able to run, file as a federal candidate. I think we could do away with those things. I think we need a lot more diversity of thought in these races, because the $500 that it costs to file for this office,
You could print a lot of yard signs, you could print a lot of flyers, you could book a venue like this, and you got some of your neighbors and you can get the word out. You can see the powers of you really don't want that. You really don't want this conversation, this meeting between us to happen. They're against gathering, they're against union, they're against us talking together and figuring things out. This is why I think it is all about connection. It is not even as much about curbing the power of government as it is about discovering our own power. This is why I urge people to reach out across the political aisle and actually talk to people who are, who are labeled as different, illegal immigrants or whatever. Talk to them, learn from them. This is how I learned about those independent election methods in our Constitution. It was pointed out to me by a more Democrat-leaning friend. And I decided to suspend judgment. We absolutely need to be peacemakers. And we need to love our enemies. Our own survival depends on it. And this is why I talk about defendant rights so much. I think it's the most overlooked subject in the entirety of our Constitution and American history, is the fact that when you have a government that gets to be judge, jury, and executioner, it's all over. And there's that beautiful poem by Martin Niemöller that says, and I'll paraphrase it, first they came for the Democrats, and I didn't speak up because I wasn't a Democrat. They came for the Jews, they came for whoever else. And then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. So love your enemies. That's literally in our Constitution. And that is what creates the majority of the text of the Bill of Rights is devoted to, quote, loving your enemies. And if you do that, if you make the government prove its case every single time, then they can't destroy you. Because you have that unity, you actually stick up for each other. That's what America is actually all about.
I'm sorry, what was your question?
How are you different than your fellow candidates? Tonight you mentioned a lot of I agree with each other, which is great, but how are you different? What do you maybe do differently than the rest of the table?
Okay, so without going on, I'll keep it short, sweet, to the point. What differs me from a lot of people is I can openly and actively listen and communicate. There's a lot different from, I know these guys all do it, but you gotta have somebody in DC that's willing to listen to the constituents, not the big pat money, not the big time numbers, but listen to the individual, because we're all individuals in this district. Now, do I like how this district was formed? Absolutely not. But I am willing to run and win, given the parameters that I am given. And to go with that into DC and just say, hey, listen, we're gonna run DC as a business, no longer just up and under charity. But we're gonna dial it back, we're gonna dial back our federal spending, we're gonna make sure that you, the people, come first. I got in this race for the people, for my neighbors, my family, my district, my county, and more than just that, my other home, which is Salt Lake and Utah County. I love both of them. So I'm going of the people, by the people, for the people, and this is who I'm fighting for. I'm not fighting for some big dumb lobbyist or some bureaucrat who doesn't give a damn about any of us. I'm here to fight for each one of you and each one of my family, each one of us on an individual level. I am so sick and tired of the government telling me that you have to pay to play, or do it our way or the highway. No, sir. You will listen to the people because that is who the Constitution is meant for all of us as individuals. And to come together as a collective. If the founding fathers can sit here and bring 13 states together, then I want to bring the 7 counties that I represent together and be a beacon on the lighthouse for all of us, for every district in our country. But I say that to end that right there.
Okay, guys, so, go on, sorry. So for me, the way I differ is that I've shown up consistently to all the counties across the board. I'm been to every county the entire time. I've taken literally Sunday off the entire time. I've met with, even with Democrats, they've showed up to my thing. At all my events, they've gone after me, they've gone after our constituents, and I also have them come and talk to me. I'm willing to work with everybody, I'm willing to show up. Everyone here has my phone number, because I put it on my website. I consistently show time and time again that if you need something, you can call me, you can text me, you can email me, and I will be available. And again, I show up, I've consistently showed up, and that has been the biggest complaint from most of the delegates, is that no one is answering their calls or emails. I say, give me 1 to 3 business days, sorry, I work 12 hours a day, and then I'm always constantly moving, so if you really have a burning question, just call me, right? I'm accessible, and I'm bringing that back to politics, accessibility. Back in the day, you just used to get in your car and go bang on the guy's house and say, why the heck did you do this, right? So for me, I put my phone number out there because I believe in that way. So if I do something wrong, if you entrust and endow me with that right to go represent you, you can call me and yell at me or congratulate me, whatever you want. You can be the citizen lobby and not the big investors and stuff like that. So, at the end of the day, I really appreciate all that you guys do. I know some people came from Tooele, I know some people are just here, some came from Salt Lake County, so I really appreciate the time and dedication you guys have done. I realize that I've been a delegate, this is the first time I'm not a state delegate, so I really appreciate everything that you've done. Again, go to my website, stoputah.com, sometimes it works. So, go there, find my phone number, call me, abuse me, I'm available. I'd love to talk. I do have events in Utah County again tomorrow night. And then I have one in Tooele County that I'll see everyone there. And then ultimately, at state convention, whatever happens. And lastly, one thing I haven't heard anybody say is God, family, country. That's what sets me apart. I will always put God first, then us as a family, and then my country.
So before we all adjourn here, so when the go interview this Saturday, we as CD4, we are not going to be voting inside the UCCU center. They have moved our vote over into the Lockhart Arena, which is in the PE building. And if you're in a certain zoning district, I don't know, we don't know which one, you're in the basketball practice facility. But your vote for CD4, it will be at 1:30.
Yeah, I would be there by 1, just to be safe.
If you can. 12:45, 1 o'clock, make sure you get with your county or your area. And so you guys can vote at the same time. But yeah, we are in the Lockhart Arena, not the UCCU Center with the main people.
Okay. Cool. Thanks for showing up. Thank them all for their time.
Thank you for showing up. It's a long process. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming to your questions. I feel so happy and joyous because I used to make in Lincoln. I would give, you would have like 4 hour, 6 hour to 8 hour, just sitting down and debating some issues. And that one minute version of it, I make it 8 hours long. Yeah. I had a couple of questions for you. You talked about it, right?
Yeah, so that's article in section 2, United States Constitution, right? Different legislation, where they differently want to have. Yeah, so the actual, we will have to do that. Going out. Yeah, so. Right, so it's behind that. Right. Awesome, like, you gotta have. You actually I just. Oh, yeah, so I'm saying. Yeah, so this we maybe have to do. Yeah, within the state. I was, there's very few years of government. I beg to differ with that conclusion of this. Municipality or something. Part of this features of the state, I just covered this. You got your very choice. I say on the. You go back, you go back. Yes. And both instant. And that's what we say. And so. I mean, these guys on the bikes, I think, speaking right. When they are very. Absolutely. I think that's why in my legislation, we see for these. Including that proposal, and every municipality is the one that harder is. So you don't have an alternative. I'm sorry, if you manage to go on recent legislature. I'm not saying. Okay. So.
Couple of questions. You mentioned the response that you posed on the police.
No, I really super detail with that, but I mean, I understand that someone insists to over knows the national. You guys can talk about it. But yeah, the question on there. In the entrance of the city, or some speech. I don't agree. The incorporation documents, yes. It was fine. I was just curious about. So with you. I feel like that all of the rights that are in the federal government's constitution is responsible. And that is cannot be abrogated. So you're, I mean, you're, that's all the rights in there. You don't do the. But. So that. But it doesn't. That is what's original. That's why every state created their own First Amendment, right? Why else would they have all done? Right. Every beauty there are. I would argue Say, you're in the trial, have a stake and say, now you. Right, so the first, I think so, and also also patients. A lot of key value, even doing for federal work, and you take, let's not lose some states in the that. These are my assistants that when we logically transfer, but because we're only talking about. Yes, and because it could. However, you value to be able to create a federal work, and it is not to say that's. Yeah, as long as it's not the all. Yeah, they've done. Very high. They can want to. Basically,
does it wanna,
yeah, I can use feedback. There is not a social credit for one, here's the big one. Okay. And that's how it does that. So let me give you a little history on the voter registration. So the Federal Voter Registration Act, sponsored by the Democrats, and I'm saying the way the state registration is. We also all Americans look at that and so the SAFE Act further centralizes that. So they've already been so the voter identification. Right. It does have. Basically, so if you are a state federal government, any state government, it's not just state. It's the problem of centralizing. Say, we just like for the dangerous. We also. There was lots that I put a bill, state government, you can show up and they can just be like, oh, you can the system. But we actually have credits for and we experience things like I know that them experience that for people. I know what's just not reaching out and you're eventually. You see, I know that. You guys, they said we got.
Yeah, but this year, not like.
Right, but you go, you guys say. I guess you're ready to be under for review. You know, we can be doing a bunch of that. So you're right that that's right. So but it does much of it that I so it doesn't prescribe those, it doesn't prescribe much in the electoral college. It doesn't say how it's system. There, so it's not to say it's up to the state legislature to decide them. Right, so the states are supposed to have naturally organic diversify methods of and so there's no incentive to the federal government to regulate our elections. And creating a federal voting system and this is why we declared your precinct and voting. So if you were here at Fox years ago, that was you just go up to your precinct and there'd be like two of your neighbors. They just had a roll there. They have and they say, hey, get their neighbor. Well, it's just why.
You don't want an IV system.
How all these people, who on earth knows that they're legal or not? Right? It does actually just boil down to having this for people's advice.
Yeah, so what is it?
That's the they have gone through that process of that either.
What is universal naturalization?
Right, yeah, you mentioned just wearing.
So.
Okay, so literally, anyone can walk their country, it's for enough of the Constitution.
So let me, the basis here. So the federal government, neither the federal government nor the state government. Yeah. Your mother rights. Right? And that's what I'm supposed to go into. Your laws is supposed to be. Not necessarily. That's the reason why you think hours. They should serve all services. And then those people, when you saw them.
Wait, I can video. What's what?
I'm not gonna say that. And there's gonna be governments and
So a lot more like Ellis Island.
So you're suggesting that you have to keep relying on documents. You can rely on themselves. This is. Right, but here's the thing, goodness, and actually. Is friends by connections or acquaintances, right? You can have the guys, so you think it's not now, so maybe you have people who that's person, right? So there's a chain of custody there, right? But it was out of here, that's the only way to go. Keep any records as well, assuming that the file. Right? Sure, that's the only way.
If I'm birthing, I have to make lifetime and say it's a good area.
That's not a file, either in custody as their witness. Right, but the question is, do you trust your government with that chain of custody argument? Do you trust them to be able to say to the bar independent of everybody who knows? Yeah. Once you prevail, the federal government be surprised with a database or the people. No, but what I'm saying is you can build out this, think of it like breaks that overlap, so like when we reconstruct family tree. You got it how it's a person travel, like this person knew me when this person knew me, and they knew me when I was. Yeah. It's not like, so it's, and I'm not saying you have to summon the very frequent instance, so here's how we work, it's how they actually get. Is that they would, you know what, this person, and the person would just sign an affidavit or swear to put this sign it, just like that. It's like another resident. And then it was. Targeted for citizens. Yeah.
Well.
I have immigration more so like voting in the most one precinct.
That's how they do it.
Well, I think
How does it get them out of our country?
Yeah.
Goodness knows. That's the one thing, so. Goodness knows, we don't know. We don't know what they're doing. We just assume. And this.
I'm saying, what they say,
How would they properly round up people? And that's saying, this is what just saying.
Yeah, how they treat their citizens, like, there's a lack of.
How they treat their citizen if they are.
Not.
None. So that's a good question. So there are some cases that would be ambiguous. This is why we need juries, because juries are writers of fact. If you're in a jury, you can ask these questions. You can say, we're really free for this person is or isn't subsidy. This is also about documents for purpose.
So every deportation requires a jury trial.
Sorry,
every deportation would require a jury trial.
It actually does. It's we're going to complain about the headache. The question we should be asking ourselves there, one question is, how on earth did we put these things in the law?
Yes, we gotta fix the problem because it's
It's already here.
Are we gonna trust those same people in power to provide and apply a solution.
Well, they're trying now and they're getting stonewalled by all these arguments.
Yeah, well.
So we're not gonna preserve our country, like, our demographic identity is literally gonna be destroyed by here.
Which is the greater threat. So, some hundred millions ago, legal countries put on our border. Or the most powerful nation on earth becomes the police.
I'd rather.
I'm gonna go illegals.
I'd rather have a people.
I don't think you're.
I am.
I think it's a. Reaching too far, but. Sorry, say again? I think it's too far. You think it is? Oh, I know it's not. I absolutely know that I'm not reaching too far by highlighting the threat of the United States of America becoming a police state. We're already 99.
So if you keep all the illegals, in our country, what do you think our country's gonna become? More like those countries they came from, or more like the country that they came to?
Okay, so.
I think you're, they don't take you at all.
Yes, there's tens of millions of them, you have to generalize.
But then I'm one of them. I know, I am one of them.
I'm asking.
No, you're not.
Yeah, but there's
You're
your
now a citizen.
I'm asking.
I understand that, but you don't just say like what it is.
He's a candidate, please speak.
Of whether or not you're citizen or not,
Yeah.
You're based on that country's laws. You are legit, like subject to the laws. And if they change while you're here, that's the risk you take.
Let's.
My concern is okay, she's now. She's what she came from the right channel. She never overstayed her. She never did anything that she shouldn't have. She never had any problems. And then she became a citizen.
Yeah, the legally.
That's what cares. I don't understand what you're arguing. It's the process is the process. And as.
Question. Wait, let me.
All right, yeah, you can get that. This is the call to action. This is how you solve. Reach out, get to know them.
I understand, but you realize every 4 years and at different political parties that you have. You do know that in the Republicans actually, wait a minute, the Democrats and the Republicans actually agree on holding our border, keeping our sovereignty, and they align. You know what? Why do they need? Okay, no, wait, no, answer the question first. You know what you said. Okay, Democrats figured out. They let people in. They were more loose. If they get more voters.
So our country become like those countries that came from.
That's where the split.
That's why I emphasize.
No, I looked at California. Okay. They are actually Biden had them on plane. Okay, he actually went and brought that.
Like, what's their government?
Yeah, you do that. In addition, our boys, I don't care. It's actually a very passionate because we've actually been taken advantage of. We are the only country in the world that is generous. With coming as no, it's not. My sister-in-law, he is.
What if they violate him?
We are the most generous. We are. Canada's got so many problems. I have relatives that are Canadian as well. Okay. And actually, I'm Canadian. So if you want to go there, I'm actually Canadian. Yeah.
I understand. English is very.
So.
I agree.
My ancestors.
I'm Scotian.
So I've been,
I'm looking forward to the restoration. So I thought then.
They came across to Ellis Island. Do you know why they let them in on Ellis Island? They said, okay, so all of these, right? Yes. Sure. But he wasn't like. You're talking.
Perhaps in the back.
When no one was here except for Native Americans. So you had all of these. Okay, so I can help you. They came over from England, whatever, because you were pretty freaked out there.
I'm not saying
Well,
that use our identity.
Okay, because
What I'm saying is, I know what you're saying. The graphic.
You sat there and
Actually teach us
for like
things about.
longer than I did.
And
you said the only thing I did back there was, the only thing that I did when I was back there is I said, what about the ones you cannot count? I wasn't asking a question. That's just me.
Or roadside, you know.
Wait, raise your
There has to
hand.
be a certain level of
I
aspiration.
just made a comment. Other people make
As
comments.
part of an.
Just from the other hand. But anyway, they came over from Europe,
It's totally
right?
fair.
They came over.
You're on a first day basis.
They did not like the question.
I don't think it's unreasonable to say.
They came over here, they settled.
I think that's pretty reasonable.
And so anyway,
As far as legislating
they
it.
assimilated, and they all have the same general basis, basis of ideas. Okay? I'm saying that they have to assimilate to a culture. Okay, I'm saying that they come over.
Voted on it. English the official language. I remember that, yeah.
In addition, when.
Yeah,
They were.
people overwhelmingly voted this.
Okay.
I think it's.
When hold on.
Same time, I
just wanted another, something that they made very clear was like, okay, what are you gonna contribute? Okay, they didn't just hand it out to everybody. I go, no, you see that.
Because we don't understand it's okay. You have to work back. And what we, if we don't understand, if we talk about language,
Don't understand us.
If you get a chance to come to, you take a chance over there.
And they. They are isolated, just. I see.
Crossing the line. For example,
why? Because it.
That
brings them in.
would be not correct.
It should be about gathering. Yeah.
When you don't have that, we have Chinatown, the Latino town, Koreatown, everything else.
If you're overstated,
We're just.
you know, they own the
Excited.
general.
Yeah, I don't think it's wrong to have, again, just a uniform language. I think that's fine. But what I'm saying is that we as individuals should be curious. And, you know, how many of the pioneers who came here when this was not part of the United States learned their language and Spanish?
Like, I think that, but here.
So,
Thank you.
We've talked a lot on.
All right, yes. Fantastic.
Yeah, I did it.
Speaking that, that they.
Well, not. I'm hoping that it's right, and honestly, like.
And I don't, but I don't.
Because I don't know.
And when the fathers did all this, actually.
And the social media platforms out there are going to create the
I
connection.
understand.
Yeah, so we just got so used to those.
I'm now the precinct chair. And it was really funny, because the guy that was my chair of the group. 6 or 8 years, he got a different job at the time. Nobody.
What are you talking about?
Okay.
That makes more
Stood up
sense.
and I said, nobody else, I will nominate myself. Under what condition?
Yeah.
And I said, I am so pissed at you. And so always red I'm seeing is not Republican. And I'm going to disrupt and change and vote for people who I think are going to disrupt and change. It is not wrong and legal. If you guys want that, and I'm your guy. If you don't want that, it's better volunteer. And everybody wants one.